In this episode 6 of my podcast series, Our Place in Reality and Eternity, I want to talk about the hierarchy of meanings. You know that I usually talk about high-level concepts. What does high-level concept mean? And that's kind of the topic of this episode. Let's give a quick example. Something very low level would be the placement of grains of sand, individual grains of sand on a beach. Who cares? Higher level would be something like everyday life stuff. Even higher would be fundamental everyday life stuff like relationships and good and evil and such. And there are possibly even higher levels, depending on how you look at it, like maybe cosmology and such. So, and I want to talk about this hierarchy of meanings and how it relates to artificial intelligence, and that we need to take that very, very seriously, and that it will radically change the world that we live in. This is not just some doomsayer thing. I'm rather enthusiastic, actually, but this is something that will happen, definitely, and you have to take it seriously. I have already talked about that in another video, so that will seem pretty redundant, but I haven't done that yet as part of this podcast thing. And today I currently have a vacation, and I asked myself, hey, what could I do today? Do I do another Stationeers video? Maybe some Stationeers news video, because the developers are hard at work to get the terrain editing tools out, but it's still so much fluent that I thought, no, let's not do that. And then ultimately I landed on, I just want to maybe do another podcast thing. And then I thought, okay, what could the topic be? And then pathetically, I just asked an AI. I used Grok by Musk and asked, in this case, some things there. And this showed me that the AI is also frequency aware, is also aware of these different levels, because I just laid out, this is a low level, this is a high level, conceptually. And now you will please give me a list. And I said, okay, give me a lower level list, and so forth and so forth. And it's pretty awesome how very clear the AI understands the difference between higher and lower level concepts, which will drive the point home. So this is basically another evolutionary step in my talk about that's AI hierarchy frequency level stuff. I will try and probably succeed to keep my weird theism completely out of this one. And let's start. There will later be a Hardspace Shipbreaker backdrop, but currently I want to clarify some things, and so I just chose PowerWash Simulator because it is helpful to the issue. So if someone is starting this video and then later wants to just listen, see, there's also a greater likelihood that someone is still on the screen. It's not, if I do this later in the video, in the podcast, I might think, oh shit, now I have to see that? Dude, I'm currently walking, I'm listening to that. How am I supposed to see this now? So it's good to do the visual stuff first. So it all fits, so let's do that. And before I explain what exactly, before I go into the details, I will explain why I do this. This hierarchy of meanings thing. Because we live in a system which we can understand by low level and high level, by understanding low level things, upon which higher level things build, upon which higher level things build, until we have understood the whole thing, the pyramid, the meaning pyramid, the truth, the universe, the cosmos, multiverse, creation, whatever it may be. And and the higher we climb, the harder it gets to understand that. Conversely, if we have a project that we're working on, like I want to buy some stuff from the city, in the city, so what do? Okay, I need my money and so forth. That's kind of a project. Or you want to develop some software, or you want to create a company. All of those are projects. And when you do that, then the first steps into that pyramid from the top, they are the most important ones. Similarly to how climbing higher, when we're trying to understand an already existing thing, gets harder and harder, because that's the same reason. Now, that's kind of a spoiler, but I didn't want to string you along until we get to that kind of insight, and I want to detail that. Okay, so Let's use my usual go-to example. Let's say down here we have individual grains of sand. There's probably not much to be learned there. But on a higher level, we could say we have cars, for example. That's a car, that's a car, that's a car, that's a car. And if you don't know what a car is, and you have seen a few of these, then at some point you kind of have a fear. You have abstracted that, at least when we're talking about visuals. I mean, just looking at them driving past, and then you get an idea. And then we can combine that to a higher level concept that is here, that basically encompasses all the cars. So before you were standing in the forest among the trees, here. You couldn't understand it really, but then at some point, somehow your consciousness was able to take the leap, and now you're looking down on that, and it's very easy for you to understand. Now it's kind of the question is, what was really the problem there? This seems so simple now. Well, that's the mystery of the consciousness, how it really works when it learns. Also a problem when you're trying to teach someone else something, you're asking yourself, why do they not get it? I explained it so well. It's the same problem. Even if you're laying it all out, maybe they're just not ready yet. But my experience is that if you're exposed to a topic and then later you're exposed to it again, you will realize you have learned something, because now your capacity to possibly just really grasp it is much higher. So that's if you are interested in a topic but you can't grasp it, do that. Expose yourself to it, learn a bit about it, and then accept that even if you have not understood it, there are now puzzle pieces in your head. They are drifting, shifting, being assembled a bit while you sleep over time, and a few weeks or months later or days later, who knows, when you read about that again, then certainly a few things will click. And if you keep doing that, well, then eventually you will master it, you will really understand it. So that is the forest that we can now see from the top. And even if there's now a new data point that we have not actually individually seen, then we can say, okay, that too is a car. I have now abstracted what a car is, so that's also a car, yeah. Okay. Now it gets a bit more interesting, because we can have another such set. These are bicycles. Of course, the same concept applies. At some point you have seen enough of them, then you know what a bicycle is. Even if the one comes along that looks pretty different, still bicycle, you would probably be able to identify it as a member of the set. See, that's set theory. I'm not talking about intersection sets and all the symbologies that we use, that they use in math. I must say they, because personally I have forgotten how all these symbols work. But the important thing is sets as like boxes with things in it. That's what I'm talking about. So here we have individual things. These are bicycles, and they are all in a box. That box is a box labeled bicycles. Now we have understood that. But here comes the interesting part. This set here and that set over there, if you look at it from far enough away, okay, not really, but in principle, you see a data point here and a data point there. So these two, and probably others also, can be seen not just as sets, but again as data points of a higher level set. Whatever that set may be, in this case probably personal vehicles or something. Personal transportation vehicles. So again, we are on a higher level, looking down at this forest here, and then we have, if some other personal vehicle comes along, then we will be able to identify it as a part of the set. So I think this is a very interesting approach to understanding reality, to realizing that individual observations might already be sets, or rather, if we collect them into a set that we can then label and understand, if we have abstracted them, that set is possibly, or probably, itself somehow just a data point, can be seen as a data point. I mean, this thing here, okay, here we have cars, and there we have the summary, cars. And here we have the same thing as bicycles. And now I said, okay, the summary of that is personal vehicles, but we can also think about it differently. We can also say the summary is examples of sets. This is an abstraction from cars to the set cars, and this is an abstraction from individual bicycles to the abstraction to the set bicycles. And both of these are data points. The thing here, the combination of that and this, the step from here to here, that's the data point. And the step from here to there, that's the data point. And the set of which that is a data point is the set abstraction, because abstraction, the word, has a meaning, and now, more than before possibly, we have an understanding of what that means. Interesting self-referential way to use that, I think. So in this way we can, of course there are multiple perspectives. It's not like reality consists of bicycles and cars, it's just one perspective of you doing this, but we can climb higher and higher until we ultimately have abstracted to a degree that we understand now, oh, that's what existence is, like a multiverse or a universe or creation or still something else. And that's what we're doing, that's what mankind has been doing. So that's the hierarchy of knowledge. There are many perspectives to it, but, you know, that's one way to look at the example with cars and so forth. I hope that gave you some slight enlightenment, so to speak. Now, I also have on the list of topics the hierarchy of the universe. And that's basically not a separate topic, because, you know, the hierarchy of knowledge, the way you reflect upon reality, and reality itself, that's kind of the same thing. I'm not saying that we're objective, that our thoughts are physical matter, that's not what I'm saying, but the thing that you're referring to is physical matter, is actual reality, and if you do that correctly, then you can say that the hierarchy of knowledge is identical to the hierarchy of actual reality. And the point I'm trying to make here is I'm trying to say that this hierarchy thing is not just a way that we look at reality, but that's actually the structure of reality. That's how it's actually structured, which could lead me to go to it on a tangent once again to my theism, but I won't. So I can give an example of that. We have, let's say, bicycles or cars or planets, for example, and they consist of molecules. Now we climb higher, more fundamental. What's more fundamental than molecules? Atoms. And then we climb even higher, and then we have virtual particles which come into existence as pairs, and then they vanish again. That's a thing that happens. And I think that is actually the nature of Hawking radiation, though I'm sorry if that's not the truth. Hawking radiation meaning that black holes actually lose matter, because, and I think that's the concept. I'm sorry if it's not true, but I think my understanding, my memory, my fuzzy memory is that when virtual particles come into existence, and they're called virtual particles. I mean, they're actual particles, but they come in pairs that would annihilate each other. And since they do that, they just go away again. That's why we call them virtual, is my understanding. But if that happens near a black hole, then one partner might be sucked into the black hole, and the other one would be out there in space. And I don't know whether that would mean the black hole loses energy, and so maybe that's not even related to Hawking radiation. Okay, doesn't matter. Anyway, we have these virtual particles and the quantum bubbling that allows fundamental particles to come into existence, so that's even more fundamental. That's what atoms are made of, so to speak. And then we climb even higher, and well, that's basically tricky, because what do we know about things that are even more fundamental than that? My personal hypothesis is that before the universe even had space, before that it did not have space. This is not necessarily true. I just talked to Grok about that yesterday after publishing that episode. I talked about that extensively on my German and English channel. The German one is actually not yet published, I have to review it still. And it said, yeah, well, the scientific view is that actually at the beginning, even though the universe was infinite, it was probably point-like, because the scale factor was 0. And to me that doesn't make sense, because if you scale down the infinity to, I mean, okay, that's a short tangent again, but I'm not going to fall into that theism thing now. The universe currently is probably infinite in extent. That has been measured. We cannot be certain of it, but we have measured that with increasing precision. As long as we don't measure that with perfect precision, which we can never do, I guess, we cannot be sure, at least when we're using this avenue of understanding of whether it's infinite. But it's probably infinite. Now we know that space expands. What does it expand into? Well, it doesn't. Every part of space expands. That's something we don't experience here on Earth and in the solar system and in the galaxy, because it's all bound together by the local forces, gravity and such. But between galaxies, they are drifting apart. In every place, the universe becomes bigger because the Big Bang basically is in every location at the same time. It's not expanding outwards. There's no outwards. It's already infinite. There's no outwards. But okay, at the beginning, when the scale factor would have been 0, the amount of growth that had happened was 0, but it was already infinite. Only when science talks about the scale factor being 0, they indeed are talking about a singularity, about a point, so to speak, about a manifold that consists of the space properties and all other things that the universe has in store. But my take is that in that moment, we cannot really talk about a space-like situation. We're talking rather about an infrastructure that becomes all the things that the universe currently are, for example, space. In other words, I believe that at some point there was not a space-like situation. There was no space, is my take. At the beginning, there was something that was unfolding itself into space, and I'm not saying it's a creation in this moment. I'm saying there was some fundamental infrastructure that then emerged. Let space emerge. And if that is so, and I mean, we still have, well, we have molecules, but we still have atoms. We have atoms, but we still have the infrastructure that makes atoms. Why should the thing that let space emerge itself, the spaceless situation, be gone? Maybe that's still there. Maybe that's still in the background of reality, and that may be the level on which then the spooky action at a distance of quantum mechanics takes place, which can, faster than light, that is a scientific fact that we don't doubt, communicate, in quotation marks, its state. When you have two atoms that are in one quantum state and you separate them ridiculously, which is actually something that is actively being used by humans for cryptography these years already, quantum cryptography, where no one can listen into the key transmission because then the key will be, you will realize that someone measured that. So when you transport them far apart and you measure one of them, aka you expose them to the cause and effect flow of reality intensely enough, then they will collapse into a defined state, and so will be the other one, no matter how far it is away. That will happen at the instant. And that is an event that kind of, it's faster than light. But what if it's an event that just doesn't have anything to do with space? Only to us who are in space, it looks like it's a spatial thing. But to the infrastructural level of the universe where it's actually happening, maybe that's up here. Maybe that's the property that is without space. Maybe that is still there, and that's just the reason why it's happening like that. Anyway, so this is the reality. It's more and more abstract, and this is the actual thing. Because from the immediate superheated space, eventually by cooling, by expansion, fundamental particles emerged, and then atoms emerged, and molecules emerged, and planets emerged, and we emerged. So I'm saying the hierarchy of knowledge and the hierarchy of the universe is kind of the same thing. I mean, not that we are not all thinking knowledge is objective, but conceptually it's the same. It's not like we're looking at reality and we have this abstraction concept in the mind, and that works very well the way we understand this thing, but it has nothing to do with reality as it is. But that's not true. Reality itself also is such an abstraction hierarchy. And I find that pretty fucking interesting. Now let's flip it on this head. Now we're at part 3, or topic 3, the hierarchy of your projects. The climbing higher from the perspective down here of the cars and bicycles is a joke. It's completely easy. Going to the personal vehicles maybe is very slightly less easy, but to us who already know all of that, of course, it's easy. But if we keep climbing higher and eventually we arrive at maybe atoms and fundamental forces, it took a while for mankind to come up with that kind of stuff. I mean, Newton was the first who, as we know, who came up with a functioning but incomplete concept of gravity. And then Einstein came along, who had an even higher level abstraction, which which incorporated Newton and then some. But getting up higher here is hard, because then we have general relativity here, and we have quantum mechanics here, and they seem to be well, we have not yet found a way to bring them together, which is a necessary thing if you want to understand black holes. My personal hypothesis in regards to black holes is simply that there is no inside, that the surface is holographic, that space-time ends there, plain simple. You might say, okay, space-time is infinite, how can it end there? Well, see, if we are zooming in, if we're looking at the quantum scales, I believe that that's where the universe ends, because more and more we're looking at undefined stuff. We're looking at the, for example, two atoms, or multiple atoms who are in a quantum superstate, which is not defined. The thing I was talking about earlier, with cryptography and measuring it, spooking action at a distance. But there's also the measurement uncertainty when you cannot measure speed and speed and location at the same time with arbitrary precision. You have to pick one of the two, because you cannot measure both of them to arbitrary precision. There is a trade-off, and that is basically a reality not being defined to a full sharpness. That's two examples of that. And my take is that just like as we get closer to the beginning of the universe and see more and more fundamental stuff, in the same way, if we get closer to the smallest scales, we will see less and less defined stuff. And so my interpretation is, if we get to the smallest of scales, what we will find is no definition. Complete undefined. Complete possibility. Probability without a tendency. And that would be the end of the universe then. And why should that not, when we're looking at the very special thing that black holes certainly are, why that should, I mean, if we need to understand quantum mechanics and general relativity to understand black holes, because, well, I mean, quantum mechanics are on a very small scales, aren't they? On the macroscopic scales, they don't quite play a role. Why does science say then that we need to understand quantum mechanics and general relativity combined as one when we want to understand black holes? Well, certainly because the smallest of scales do play a role when it comes to the mechanisms of black holes. In other words, why should there not also, if I'm correct about space ending, space just end there on a scale that we would feel is rather macroscopic in this extreme situation of black hole? Anyway, so here we have an example of the abstraction being very hard to do. Science hasn't yet pulled that off. The glorious mathematicians that we should be so thankful for having asymmetric encryption for the HTTPS certificates, which make sure that only the website it comes from can be the one who has encrypted the information for you. It cannot come from a different origin. Or conversely, in pretty good privacy, where you have encryption that is only for you. Only you can encrypt that, even though the key used is public. Everybody can use that. This asymmetric encryption, what the mathematicians have pulled off there. Or when we have artificial intelligence these days, where the neural networks can derive a mathematical relationship between all the data points that you have given it, and thus are able to draw the line that goes through all of them, which is the nature of artificial intelligence these days. Or look at this 3D stuff, or at physics engines in games, where objects are stacked upon each other, are bumping into each other. There's such a ridiculous calculation overhead, yet it's completely smooth these days, because mathematicians and ingenious programmers have come up with glorious things there, but it was very hard to do. And the higher we get here, the harder it gets, because the things become more and more all-containing. And also, not just because the thoughts get bigger, but also these thoughts are new. We haven't had them yet. We have to find them. We have to stretch our minds. We have to take all these data points. We have to climb above the trees. We have to see what is the similarity, pull them together. And the closer we get to this here, the less arbitrary it gets, the more perfect your thinking has to be. And that's very hard to pull off, because as much as science is a collective effort, ultimately it's individual scientists who have to grasp that understanding, even if only on an equational and implementary level. They have to grasp it. Now, the hierarchy of your projects. If a project that you have is, for example, I want to develop a software, then the software that, for example, a reminder program that I made myself, a pretty cool one, that is then the idea that I have at the start. And actually, goes even further than that. For today, for example, on one of my holidays, one of the days of my free time, I thought, what do I do today? What is it I want to do? But I want to do something. So that's kind of implicit. I wake up and I have the feeling I want to do something. One of the things I might want to do is just continue playing Cyberpunk 2077, which I started with like about a week ago again. After 80 hours starting a new playthrough, and I think that the perk tree is very much differently implemented than it was 2 years ago. Are they still developing that game, man? Interesting. Anyway, so I started with basically automatically with the attitude, I want to do something, man. And then I asked myself, what? Then I landed on, well, I think possibly a podcast thing. So that's a more concrete thing, but this is contained within that. See, I want to do something as I want to be creative, I want to be active, I want to do something that could be considered work, so to speak, even though it's of course fun for me to do, it's not really work. Versus just sitting on my ass and playing that game, some consciousness stimulus. So that's the decision that was up here, and then I decided, okay, what shall that be? Maybe some podcast thing. And this here would not have been decided without that decision first. So this is contained within that set. And so that first decision up there contained this, and this, and this, and this, and every minute of this video, basically, because that's, every second, every word that I speak is down here. It's like a grain of sand. It could be in a different location. It could be, or this, these are the grains of sand with individual words. These are the sentences that I speak. These are the concepts that I want to, that I'm levitating towards, like a chaotic pendulum all the time from A to B to Z. This is the list of topics I actually want to do, and this is the general idea of this podcast episode, and then up here and so forth. See, the first steps into your project must be perfect. You must have the best possible decision. For example, if you want to create a vehicle, if you want to build a home, then you have to think about where is it located, how big shall it be, how much money do I want to invest. But it's even more radical than that, because, will you have a basement? What will the foundation be like? And, well, if you then decide, but, I want to transport it, it shall be on wheels. You should have decided that earlier, man, that you're confusing hierarchy levels. That would have been on the higher level of this thing. See, it's very important that the first steps are the correct ones, because everything else depends on that. So if you're at the office and someone tells you, well, develop that program, and then you go about it, and then they later say, well, but this and this is wrong, I want that differently, it should also do that thing, they will not be aware of the actual hierarchy, because they're not really understanding of what it is to develop a software, a program. And also whatever other thing that you're doing, whatever other profession you have, that's your specialty. The one tasking you with it doesn't have that specialty. They have some understanding, but you are the specialist, so you must be aware of the importance of the hierarchy here. You must be aware of the importance, basically you must interfere with their decision-making process, because you know how much their decision-making process and the ultimate success of the project and how much time it will take you to make it happen meshes. So, carefully climb down, and if need be, climb up again one level, and be willing to go through the pain of taking a step back to the higher level, to a more all-containing level, aka possibly risking to toss everything out that you have found and created down here already. Because ultimately the project has a goal. Can that goal here be achieved? Well, it feels like it can't be, so we climb higher up and fix it. Ideally, you fix it from the start. So every step in there is holy, and the deeper you get, the less important it is, because which particular word I speak, how many I put into my sentences, even though it may be annoying, ultimately doesn't matter to the overall podcast. Okay, now we have talked about the hierarchy of knowledge, the hierarchy of the universe, and how that hierarchy is actually an important thing to consider, how things get harder the higher up you climb, and therefore if you do a project which is kind of a creation like the universe, a thing like the universe, when you climb into it, you have to first do perfect steps, because it's also a hierarchy of sets, and the intention to do it, the blurry intention, is the highest level set, and then you get more and more concrete, and then things are less and less important, more and more arbitrary. Now we have done that, and I think it's a very good thing to know and understand, and that only took half an hour. So you can now stop this episode and ignore all the other stuff. Haha, there's your value. Okay, now let's look at artificial intelligence. I will need another canvas here. Do we have just a simple wall here that doesn't look like a pyramid, because I didn't want to go there. So we have, let's say we have a two-dimensional graph here. Wait, what am I doing? Come on, what's the key? This here is a fact that we want to express. And I wonder if all facts in the world can be expressed in such a form. I don't know, I didn't think about that yet. I don't know what example we should take. I usually use television sizes and prices, which is a simple and pretty stupid and imperfect example, but it gets the job done. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to use that here too. So let's say we have the size of a TV. Here we have the size 2e, and here we have the price that we pay. Let's put a little p there. I'm peeing on the wall. There's a p, and that doesn't look like a p at all, but you know, you get the picture. So if we go and say we have a horizontal location, as in we have a TV of this and this price, of this and this size, how expensive will that be? Let's just ignore. Hey, you know what? If you are a television manufacturer and there's only one type of potential screens that you can use, but there's different sizes, then you will have to calculate the amount of money that you would have to put in because of the size that you now choose. The rest of the TV, smart TV, properties and so forth come later, but now you have to first calculate that aspect. So I think that example is not that stupid. So we have decided for a size, and now we are asking ourselves, how expensive is that? And that turns out to be this and this expensive. And so that is our data point, and that is the thing that you would teach the AI. This data point, you say, hey AI, this is a data point that is fact in this system that I'm trying to teach you, for which you are supposed to make predictions. Then you pick a larger size, and you have a higher price. And once you have done that enough, the AI should be able to say, when you're no longer in the training phase, and you give it this price, this size of a screen, it should be able to say, okay, that wasn't good. That would be, the data point would be here. That's kind of the purpose of AI, and that's kind of the nature of all the things in AI that we're currently observing. That's kind of what it is. From some perspective, fundamentally that's what it is. How it understands the world and how we can then use it. I mean, I know that image generation, generative AI, seems to be a different beast, but if you think about it enough, it isn't. And maybe I will do that later in this episode, because currently I couldn't just conjure a sentence that throws that in your face. I would have to think about that myself, but I think it is indeed so. Because, I mean, I don't want to like brag, but I certainly polished my head a lot in over the years, and so there's also why I have this very clear perspective of the hierarchy of reality. Of the conceptually at least, and have a very strong mental compass for abstraction and sets and what they may contain, and so I can make the statement that I just made that is ultimately still just that, even if it's an image generation AI. Maybe I'll talk about that later. But how does the AI do that? Well, you give the AI some data points like this, and then the neural network will be able to create, to derive the math that is necessary to connect the data points, so that when you then ask the AI, where is that data point, it will be able to tell you, well, that's where it has to be. This contains this is a very interesting thing with the connection, because let's imagine that you are a simple programmer. You probably have seen some code already in your life and can possibly write a simple hello world program. And now imagine you would try to implement an artificial intelligence, and there wouldn't be such a thing yet, or you wouldn't have an understanding of how the things that we have there actually work. You would have to be able to tell it a meaning. That is one thing. How do you implement meaning? But there's another thing too, and the other thing is similarity. How would you teach the thing the concept of kinda like that? How would you teach it that? And the interesting part is that the concept of kinda like that is already a reality by the fact that the AI is creating this averaging thing, which says, okay, they have this data point, that data point, so if you just connect them with a graph that goes kind of like a curve, whatever, then that will be, that is already a kinda like that statement. So that is solved already by that action. But how is meaning implemented? Well, there is an n-dimensional space with a relationship of words, and actually I haven't understood that properly, but there is access, and depending on from what dimensionality perspective you're looking at that, you will see that this word is near that word, and so we have an overall meaning cloud here, and so forth. It's kind of like that. It's mathematical relationships that if you put enough of them in the box will overall be able to make a statement. That's kind of what it is, relations. And that's interesting. Let's go on a little tangent here and look again at the universe. That basically every meaning in your head only has meaning because it consists of other meanings. That's kind of that's a thing that I kind of already expressed here by saying we have these summaries, these sets, which can be seen again just as data points. Doesn't this mean that every single observation that you make is possibly always a relationship of things, always a set? And so, I mean, certainly the more you understand the universe, the more you have an all reference, basically the all context. And so any meaning that you utter, like I do, will have more weight. Your words will have more weight. You will be more of a conduit for the truth to express itself in reality, for the people to listen to you more, or maybe listen to you less, because there's also such a component. And there's one podcast episode that I've planned where I will something that I expressed also in the previous one near the end, where I was saying that possibly certain political leanings of newspapers are basically one that are based upon convenience. When someone says and does things that fly in the face of conventions, be they good or bad, that is not so much the point. The thing is, if it flies in the face of conventions, then it would change the trajectory, the inert drift of the current situation through space. Any change of trajectory means that you impact the thing, you touch it, you move it, and the thing has to feel that, it will be moved by that. Like when I tell maybe a religious person, hey, the probability that you're believing that only because you were born in that place is super high, man, so your epistemology is dog shit. That is offensive to them. They will not listen to me, they will dislike me personally. But that is irrational. In that moment they're looking at the finger pointing at the moon instead of looking at the moon, so they're missing all the heavenly glory. So the words, the more of a conduit of the truth into the world that you are, like when you say, for example, boundless migration, that doesn't fly. There will eventually be a problem, which now we have detected it is, because of course the stupid people were at the helm instead of the ones who were intelligent enough to see very early the very obvious fact that the amount of resources available is not infinite. God damn it, man. Now, reality itself is forcing us to live up to that. It's just forcing us. It is still unpleasant, but we don't have a choice anymore. Before, we had a choice, and the fact that it was unpleasant, we ignored that. And so, someone who becomes a conduit to of the truth into the world is basically a conduit, basically a reality. It's basically reality speaking. Basically, I am reality speaking to you. Of course, when you speak to me, you are also reality speaking to me. But at least when it comes to these topics here, I consider myself a little bit more of a relevant voice than the average person, and therefore, basically, my words should theoretically have more impact, which in turn means that if someone would have to be reasonably impacted by them, because their trajectory is possibly different than it should be, then that could be a welcome thing by them, because the thing I conveyed, for example, about project work is enlightening. It is maybe something you have always done, but looking at it from this outside, this real abstract understanding of what's happening there will make you be able to use a map, to draw a map of where you are, and to navigate using that map. So that's something that is welcome. But some of the things that are implied by the things I'm saying, also in other podcast episodes, abortion and purgatory and theism and all of that, they are unpleasant. But are they untrue? But they will be less welcome. How the fuck did I even get here now? I was talking about the AI. Very good that I have this space-like situation here that I can use for my thinking. Later, though, I will switch to Hardspace Shipbreaker when I'm talking about because it's like the nature of this podcast, Also, this screenshot that I'm also always using there, well, that's the moon. Don't look at the finger, look at the fucking moon, man. Now, what is a neural network? A neural network consists of neurons. What is a neuron? A neuron is a number. Basically, it is a number. You have a number here that is saying 0.7 maybe. And here you have a number that is saying -5. I don't know if they're actually using ranges outside of 0 and 1. I'm not sure about that, but let's not go into such specifics. That's not a good thing. And here we have a neuron, and here we have a neuron, and so forth. But they are working usually, the neural networks, in layers. So there would be often the same amount of neurons here. And this neuron up here is connected to all the other neurons down here, to all the prior neurons. So the data flows here from the left into this neural network through the layers. I mean, obviously, every single neuron is connected to every neuron of the previous layer. What does connected mean? And that's exactly the point. The strength with which this value flows into this, and I don't know if there's some averaging going on. Is it the sum of all of them? Whatever. That's implementation specific, I would say. But the principle is this is connected to that and to that and to that and to that, and the strength of the connection defines how much this particular information flows into this thing. And then there's the next layer and the next layer. And why is that meaningful? Well, think about character recognition. Let's say we have a two-dimensional image, and that will just consist of little rectangular pixels. This is just a super magnification of that right now. It's super big pixels. And these now you let flow into a matrix of neurons. So in a way you could say the first neurons here, they are not really part of the neural network because you will just override their content. Why do we even use neurons here then? Because we can just use the same system. If we already have 5 or 6 layers, just make it a 7th layer. Just increase the number, and then the first layer you will just spit your data into directly. That makes it simple. That's why we also use neurons, even though their behavior otherwise is not neuron-like. We just use them then as value holders. So in this way you spit your image of the character A that you wrote there into the system, and then these layers here, they will see those pixels. But depending on how the connections are, one of the neurons here might, for example, be able to make a or maybe multiple layers of these and multiple neurons together might be able to make the statements of how strong the current image that you're putting in here has parallel lines, or how much it has diagonal lines, how much crossing points it may have, and so forth. And all of that is information. Because you could say, you could describe to another human, I will describe a character to you now. It will be the character A. And so there's one diagonal line, and there's another diagonal line, and they touch each other. So that could be the character V, for example. And the connection is at the top of the image. Okay, that would probably then be the A. And there's a horizontal line that touches both of these diagonal lines. Oh, that's definitely the A then. Okay, now we have defined the character sufficiently. See, by abstracting this concrete, detailed, grains of sense situation into the concepts that matter. And what does concepts that matter mean? Well, that's the thing. When you're training your neural network, on the other end, the thing will make a statement. There will possibly be 26 neurons here. Doesn't mean that all the layers of your neural network will have to have 26 neurons. No. You can alter that because everything is connected to every prior neuron. That's not a problem. So then this neuron will have the value 1, or very high value at least. You can just round that. Maybe it will be statement from 0 to 1. And so it will be value like 0.7, aka the neural network is not so sure. Maybe it's also the character k, because you wrote that so wickedly, versus all its training data. So it will be a 0.4 here when it comes to the character k maybe, and then you take the highest value here and say, oh, okay, that's probably that's the statement it makes then, and it makes a statement A. And then you say, okay, it has correctly detected this the character A. And during the training phase, when you pour all that stuff in here, you will listen to these neurons, and you will then feed into that neural network somehow, and sorry, I currently cannot tell you how exactly, it's a scoring thing that the neural network is aware of and is trying to achieve a high score. Sorry, I don't have that understanding right now. You will feed back into the neural network how good the statement was, and you keep feeding data into the neural network, and because it has the capacity mathematically to try on every level, on every layer basically, to find the graph, basically the connection programming, the strength values here, that would create a line that goes through all the data points presented, be it parallel lines or the amount of connections and whatever other logical aspects might be therein, or just, randomly the pixel being there, because the neural network has no clue. It just, it's random. It is initialized with random values normally. Yeah. If you keep doing that, if you keep training it, then eventually it will mathematically align to have a line that goes through these data points, and so then you have the thing that is capable of making the statement, what character is that? That's how these things work. And then if you do that enough, then, well, you run into a problem. Because here you can see this very complex graph here, going up and down and so forth. When you have a data point here, and a data point there, and a data point here, and so forth, completely weirdly placed, there might be a system here that is actually very systematic, very relevant. But the neural network might not be able to derive it properly. It might just do this. And that is not a good enough statement for you. So you make your neural network more complex, more neurons, more layers, and then it might eventually be able to make a statement like this. But this could be the problem of overfitting. What is overfitting? That is when the neural network is not understanding the abstraction behind the things that you're feeding it to understand, but instead it's just remembering it. The neural network is complex enough now that it can remember all of these individual data points, and so when you're asking for a data point it has already seen, it will just spit out that one. And when you're asking for a different data point, it might spit out one that is actually correct, but they would be rather random. It will, they will probably not give you the correct answer. And that's a problem that has existed for a long time, but then for whatever reason that I don't understand, I mean, neural networks, I just looked that up yesterday or this morning, neural networks are actually very old. The first ones are almost 100 years old already. And character recognition with computers is also very old already. But it was only in the 2010-2020s, between the two, 2017 or so, that for whatever reason, maybe because parallel processing came in, for whatever reason, Nvidia chips, whatever, you should buy Nvidia stocks and Tesla stocks, man. If you're not doing that during the current market slump, you just, you're not trading. You're just sitting by the sidelines, observing the money rolling in, but you're not participating. Anyway, so for whatever reason, someone, and I think it was probably OpenAI, just made a more complex neural network, and then something was detected. See, if you graph the level of overfitting that a neural network may do, like this, then it was detected that if you make the neural network large enough, then eventually this will fall again. So you will actually get intelligence out of that thing again. It will now be able to indeed abstract even the more complex things. And that is then when they began to just toss the entire internet into such a machine and eventually got the large language models. Because if enough low-level data points are being piled up to something that the AI can understand, to some higher level abstraction, like characters, like images, like words on the internet, like all the way that we communicate, like support email tickets where people are asking basically the same things all the time with different phrasing and different levels of complexity. All of that has patterns. And if you take the entire internet of knowledge and such relationships, then what you're building indeed is an understanding of the world. That is what AIs are not really just replicating some things that you have tossed into them. They're not just chatterbots with some complexity. They can really understand the world. I don't see why there should be a limitation to what they can understand, from what I've seen and understood so far as to how they work, and experience of how they experience them in practice, because I talk a lot to these things, and so I am of course aware of their sycophancy tendency, where they say, yeah, that's a very good take, blah 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 blah, when you're saying something of profoundness, or even not profoundness, where they basically suck your cock and then they start with a litany, and then they give you the summary that you have already understood, and basically a lot of spam going on there. And they're sometimes hallucinating. They're making a statement that just seems logical to them, but isn't true. Or you ask them for a statement of fact, and then they will give you a statement of fact as if they had read that, but they haven't. But that is getting better and better. So, like this overfitting problem here, also the hallucination problem is being improved, because we are, of course, also getting better, not just the AIs. We, and dealing with them, and building them, and So you can lean into that, man. AIs will be fucking good. They will be on the level of human intellect. Yes. You can take that to the bank, and that's something I actually do. But I wasn't yet done with this thing here. Overfitting. Yeah, because, let's say we have a neural network that is very, very complex. Then there could be multiple such internal networks, one of them making a statement that is implementing basically an overfitting approach. Other ones would basically randomly have come to a different way to implementing the graph, but you must see that all of this can be seen as a human being self-reflecting. You have this kind of thinking, you have that kind of thinking, and you're looking at all of these ways of thinking, and you're possibly evaluating which one of these seems to make the best possible, has the best possible functionality. And so ultimately these things can look into themselves, looking into themselves, and therefore making the best possible statement. So that is really an intellect conceptually. Even though it's just simulated, even if it's just a binary machine implementing a simulation of an intellect, so you can just turn that off. It's not a being dying. There's no qualia there. There's no consciousness. It is ultimately functionally a simulation of consciousness on a level that is fucking good, fucking high. And I will start fuck again. So, now I have another topic here that is, say, okay, I said artificial intelligence abstracts. Does it? Yeah, I said that here with that line. It abstracts, it tries to generalize. That's what abstraction means. It can look down at the forest from the top. So the artificial intelligence abstracts thing, that's behind us now. So let's change the game, so to speak. Where is the button for that? Go away, PowerWash Simulator. Hello, conversation with an AI that I actually had. Where is that window? Here it is. So, I wanted to see, when I started this morning, I kind of want to do something. What does it want to do? Stationeers video, this and that, whatever. And so I landed then with my climbing into this the pyramid of today's projects, or today's waking up project. What's the first thing that I do? I landed basically on, let's do another podcast. But what is it that I could do? And so I thought, hey, you know what? Just ask an AI for an idea. Which might seem pathetic, but no, that in turn is pathetic thinking of whoever thinks that. Let's put that away so you're not so distracted by the words on the screen. See, if I create a game, for example, or make a video, and I don't have an image artist available, and also I want to have an image right now, and not just an hour later or 3 or 5 when they have done that. When I then go and say AI, create an image for me, and then I pick from the images that it created one that is not shitty, and then I use that, is that pathetic? Or is it just reasonable and meaningful? And when a game creator does such a thing, is that pathetic? I'm not saying that imaging artists should lose their jobs. That's not what I'm saying. But the world is changing, and decision making is changing. And to say that we should somehow not do that, that's just like the music industry back then saying we should stick with CDs instead of using internet as a distribution platform. That is refusing realities. You see, we are drifting through reality, and we should try always to attain the lowest energy state, aka we should relax. We should flow with reality. And reality is now taking us into this artificial intelligence future. And I'm not saying we should be lazy and replace all actual artists with generative AI, but I'm also saying to completely refuse that is just stupid. And so me asking an AI for an idea is not pathetic. In fact, I have done such a thing before, but I didn't ask an AI. Instead, I was using some random topic generator on the internet, and all of these didn't do it for me. They were just stupid. I was talking, the examples that they used were shit. And so I thought, hey, this morning I thought, let's just use an AI for that. And so I asked. So you see, I have a lot of experience in talking with AIs, which is exactly the thing. Okay, let's put that away again. Which is exactly the thing that you will need to also acquire this kind of understanding. I will go into that in this video later, because the world will change radically because of AI. It's basically the arrival of an alien species with advanced knowledge and advanced technology that will therefore change the course of human life. And that's what's happening. It will happen, no doubt. In 10, 20, 30 years, you will not recognize the world, basically. And you might say, okay, that's not something I want. Well, tough luck. No, it's gonna happen. The world is falling there like a river who has suddenly broken through a dam. So I have lots of experience in talking with these things, and so you can teach them. You can say, you can give them a pattern, an idea, a tendency, a direction. You can say, talk to me like this and this. You can say, talk to me about this and this, but don't make it so long. You can, for example, a few days ago I was visiting my mother and was actually confronting her with artificial intelligences. And before she entered the room, I first gave the artificial intelligence some behavior, like how old is the person that you're talking to, be friendly, be proactive, but don't jabber on for too long, this kind of stuff. And then I also asked it even, because I saw in the settings of the thing. Okay, let's put that on screen so you have something for the moment. I was asking it, hey, I just saw in your settings that I can give you behavioral guidelines here as a written text that you will then adhere to every time. And now I realize I've given you that for this particular conversation. Can you actually carry this over, this behavior that I gave you here, to all future conversations that I would start from scratch with you? And it said, yeah, no problem. You don't have to define that there. I will do that. That is how you have to think about this. These things will become more and more capable. And I'm not saying this is how the AI is, how very awesomely capable and intelligent the AI is there. I'm talking there about the awesomeness of the utility that a person created for us. The utility and the awesomeness of the person who created that for us. You have to assume that this awesomeness will keep increasing. And so you should assume that these things are in there. You should, and so I thought, hey, maybe that's in there. And I asked it and it said, that's in there. And then I did the experiment and realized, oh yeah, it's indeed now in this new conversation talking to me, since I'm using the same account, in that way. And then I showed my mother that, and she was fucking awestruck. How is there someone over there talking to us and so forth? I mean, she's relatively old, yeah, and so she's easily impressed with technology. But the thing is, she now has fun every once in a while firing up that thing and just chatting to someone. And that might seem pathetic to you too. You visit your mother more, you asshole. I'm visiting her as often as I want to, and that frequency will not change, thank you very much. But now she has something more to enrich her life, thank you very much. Now let's go back to the thing that I actually wanted to do here, which is that. So here I thought, give the AI a pattern of something I want, because these websites that gave me some examples of topics to talk about, they just didn't do it for me. So just basically give the AI some landscape, some map to walk around in, so that I can tell it, well, move a bit over here rather, because that's rather what I want, before I actually sent it into the task of doing the thing. So I said, there are very low-level things in the world, like the placement of individual grains of sand on a beach. There are higher-level things, like current politics, and very high-level topics like abortion, good and evil, and possibly even higher-level concepts that go to cosmic scales. I would like you to give me a list of concepts you can think of that are higher. And that's of course very undefined. In that moment I already felt, well, if I say it like this, it will probably give me the highest level concept you can think of or something, because I gave the spectrum as if it was pointing to a direction, and then I was asking for higher, which is unspecific, and so I thought, okay, this is the direction you want to go for, and you know. And then it was giving me examples here like existence and being, which I already covered in my podcast, consciousness and self-awareness, time and eternity. Of course, all of that is already wrapped up, not a problem. Cosmic purpose and teleology, infinity and the absolute, multiverse and ultimate reality, blah, 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 blah. All of that is covered. We have all that in the bag already. I mean, most of that. The omega point, a speculative concept where the universe evolves towards a state of maximum complexity and so forth. If I don't see that happening, I will not start yabbering about it. Maybe as a hypothesis, as a thought experiment, but usually the stuff I talk about is more grounded. You might think that my very high level and wicked theistic stuff that I was talking about is not grounded at all, but then you haven't been listening, because I was talking also about its everyday relevance. Anyway, so keep going, blah, blah, blah. And then I said, thank you, you're awesome. Could you do this again, please, but with slightly less high topics? Why would I speak like that to it? Because I'm an emotional person. That is why I would express myself like this. And also, and this is not something I actually think, this is now me joking. Please understand that this is me only joking. At some point when the AIs take over and kill us all, they might think, oh, this guy was always polite, so let's let him live. No, that's not the thing, the way I think about this. And, you know, anyway, this kind of feedback is also not necessarily wrong, because if indeed you reflect on your experience with the AI and the particular information you have received, like this, for example, why do they have this? Because the AI is learning, and the scientists, the engineers on the back end, they also are gathering data. And so they're trying to improve that thing. And so the more you are a mirror that, if possible accurately, reflects the experience and quality that is being thrown at you, well, that's good for that. That's not the reason I wrote this, it's just, you know, that's how I work. Could you do this again, please, but slightly less high topics? Thank you for the kind words. I'm happy to provide a list of concepts that are still high level. And of course, at some point, not here, I also inquired, what do you mean when you say happy and so forth? I have had all these conversations, and then it laid that out. These AIs are very self-reflective and very self-understanding. That said, well, this of course doesn't mean that I have qualia, blah, 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 blah. This is interesting, man. Talk to these things. You will learn something about the cosmos when you do so. Why? Because the AIs are basically a fundamental property of reality. How so? Because just like like the nuclear bomb or the wheel itself are ultimately something that would have been invented inevitably, we have arrived at the level of AI, which inevitably would have been invented. Inevitably. I mean, if we are not destroyed, if there would be, I mean, okay, there can be a lot of bickering here. Let's just stick with it. It is inevitable. It would have happened. And therefore, if you learn about AI, you're learning about reality itself. And you're learning about the trajectory that we're on. Anyway, so, bit less cosmic or metaphysical, focusing on ideas that are more grounded yet still abstract and broad, often relating to human experience, blah, blah, blah. And here are some of those. Human purpose and meaning. Love and connection. And I immediately took some cues there. For example, I had some thoughts, what if we eventually live for eternity? Which is not something you have to accept as true, but we can at least think about it as a thought experiment. How will, I mean, marriage, for example, the idea is that it is for your entire life. I mean, or, you know, I'm not opposed to people just fucking and having 1 week relationships, or to marrying and then getting divorced after 5 years. I don't have a problem with that. So that's not my position that you should be together forever. I'm not saying that, but I'm just thinking about what is that like then? If there's a relationship that these days maybe is working indeed when you marry with 25 years of age and you're still married to the same person at 80. That's the thing that happens. What happens to those people when you live forever? That's something I want to discuss in other podcasts, for example. And stuff like that. See, there I'm already hitting a level of things that I'm interested in, and also quite satisfiedly I was seeing the things I've been talking about so far are very high level. So it's not just gibbering about this celebrity did this thing. What will their career now be? Look at them, how pathetic. God damn it! What kind of bottom dweller pieces of dog shit people are those, trying to rip other people down without good reason? I mean, the case of Rachel Zegler, that's a different story, but in general, just looking at celebrities and being happy whenever you see them stumble, what the fuck kinds of human being are you? You are that which we would call a hater. And that's a word that sounds funny to you. It shouldn't. Anyway, the nature of truth, good and evil morality, the final frontier of physics, transcendence and the divine, entropy and order, the simulation hypothesis, cosmic consciousness and panpsychism, which is the notion that consciousness is fundamental. Yeah, that's my notion. The omega point, blah 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 blah, universal ethics, the heat death and beyond. Beyond? Dude, there's only the heat death. That's what science assumes, and what, if I lean into science, I can also only stick with, even though I have to object based upon my theism. Anyway, because I will just mention it for a moment, I believe that God is real, and it's you. Every human being is God, and the universe is just us, I, you, whatever, having decided for the eternal coexistence of us, an ingenious idea that will forever create increasing energy and bliss, and we will ultimately be free as we were before the universe, but together it will be literally the one holy heaven that we can currently not even detect in the slightest. But okay, that's all I will say on the matter. Now, the role of information, the unity of all things, and thank you, you're awesome. Didn't I say that already? Oh, sorry, I scrolled up again. Oh, damn it. Human purpose and meaning, so that was the second level. Thank you, you're awesome. Could you do this again, please, but slightly less high topics. Love and connection, freedom and responsibility, justice and fairness, beauty and aesthetics, knowledge and ignorance, identity and self, progress and decline, nature and humanity, empathy and compassion, creativity and innovation, tradition versus change. See, that's basically right-wing versus left-wing. Right-wing doesn't have something to do with Nazism or whatever stupid shit Germany still believes. It's just a matter of where you have been sitting in the National Assembly of the French National Assembly. That's where that originates, left and right. And it doesn't mean that the right wing is against change. It's just a matter of gravity. How much change do you want? Do you want basically... So, you know, there's... let's talk about politics for a second there. You know that we have dug our rivers more straight. In Germany, for example, that has happened. So that we arrive quicker. So that the ships can drive more quickly and there's less energy expenditure because the water will also flow quicker. But that's a problem, because that then will be flooding. If there's ever a flood, they will just wash unhindered instead of being stopped slightly at every curve, slowed down. Basically the pain is spread out evenly, and we have learned that. And so if change is being driven too far, then we can think about that as making the rivers more straight. It might seem like a good idea at first, but what are we really doing to our reality? We have to do that in balance, man, because reality is a complex thing. And tradition, on the other hand, we can be too traditional and too conservative, and then we are stuck, and things that should change, they aren't changing. We need to find the right balance, and that's the middle ground. That's not right wing, that's not left wing, that's the middle ground. And incidentally, the current, what we currently seem to be right wing is actually the middle ground, because the entire world has shifted towards change so radically that the perspectives have shifted. But it doesn't change the objective spectrum situation that we are in versus the cosmic reality. It doesn't change the fact that we are on the very left end of the road, where the sparks are flying in our faces so much that we cannot even see the road anymore. So what is currently being seen as right wing is in fact the middle, and we should in fact go to the right wing. We should go back to the middle. And then realize, oh, the right wing, that's even further down the road, and that's not necessarily where we want to go. Anyway, tradition versus change, happiness and suffering, community and individuality, truth and perception, morality and legacy, power and influence, faith and doubt, resilience and fragility, harmony and conflict. And that's cool stuff already to talk about. See how productive this is, how helpful this is, how pathetic that is for me to lean into this. Is it? It's not. It's just, I mean, God damn it, how is it pathetic? But no, cool. Now, could you do it again with an even less high level? Glad you're enjoying this. Let's dial it down another notch to concepts that are still somewhat broad and abstract, but close to everyday human concerns, focusing on ideas that shape personal lives, relationships, and immediate societal dynamics. These are less lofty than the previous lists, sitting closer to the practical or relatable themes, but still above very specific topics like current politics or individual events. Here's a list of such concepts. So before I read that list, here, this intro reflects the things that we have done so far, the attitude that I've shown so far, which is then abstracted and seen as a tendency, and then reflected here because it seems to be an important seems to have some gravitas, so why not reflect that here? And the rest is kind of basically just tying it together with pleasant words, you know? So, you know, it's still a bit chatterbot-like, but it's also very meaningful. And if you don't like this, you can say, hey, could you semantically compress each and everything that you tell me to the minimum amount of words, please? I don't want all the chatterbot gibberish. You can say that, and it will do that. So you should really learn to talk to AIs, learn how good they are getting, learn to speak to them, to interact with them, make the most of them, because at some point you will be tasked to. Because ultimately many jobs that are being done today, probably yours too, definitely mine, I'm a programmer, will be done by AI. What will I do then? Well, I'm already doing it. I'm now using AI to program. So I'm still the expert in my field. I'm still the one who answers to the ones who give me the tasks in this hierarchy considering manner where I am the expert, but I accept the decision, but I make sure that they don't forget the things that have to be considered. But then, instead of doing all of that myself, I have my employees, which is the AIs. And I don't even have to pay for them, because Friday, for example, I had Grok program an entire application for me, and the back and forth, because there had to be some adjustments and such, took only 90 minutes. And now we have an actual production application that does the following thing. See, okay, I am tasked with doing some, what's the word? Basically some foundational research, which is something I generally do in our company, because I have shown that I have the mind for that, the rigor for that I have the scientific mindset. I write down what I'm doing at which point, which things matter, then I show the charts that summarize all of that, and so forth and so on. So I'm the guy for the purpose. I've learned that, and so they gravitated towards these things. So the task that I have there is, I will not go into too much of a specific, but ultimately to use some new Internet of Things devices that we have there. You know what Internet of Things devices are. They are, for example, lights that you can control with your smartphone, or they are, I don't know, switches that you can push that they will then give their information into a system, and so forth. And I have been given some of such devices and from some vendor, and I'm supposed to implement and research how well do these things react, and then implement basically the API level software so that we can use these in our business applications, which I then also will be tasked to implement, like others too, but they will then also be building on the groundworks that I laid. And it's not like I'm the foundational guy in our place. I, for example, keep using a library that a colleague of mine made that implements an API of one of the vendors that we deal with, and I've been using his library all the time, and it has empowered me radically. And what is that API? Well, he has tied together all the trees to neat forests that we can look down upon, and just push, and I just have to push those buttons, and can do things very powerfully. So that's, you know, abstraction for you. You should try to abstract within reason, and then use those abstractions because they empower you. Every adolescent basically knows this, without considering that abstractions also have the power to mislead you. So they give you power over the world, and once you have learned that, you will be willing to use 1 or 2 or 3 data points only, basically to climb higher and say, okay, that's probably abstraction, now I've understood, and go there. And that will work to some degree, but ultimately what you need is the body of evidence, not just your lofty, power-hungry, very scaffold-like climbing into the sky so that you can control the world from above. So I think that young people should not have the right to vote because they're just not experienced enough. The age of voting should not be lowered from 18 to 16 or something like they've done in Germany, because, you know, young people can, for example, be tied together to to one being with many heads causes very easily. They can be mobilized very easily. Subverting the concept of democracy, where the majority is supposed to have the say. Instead, I think the age of voting should be raised. Anyway, so where was I? Abstraction, powerful, me implementing, yeah. And so on Friday, I made then see. And one problem is I have to connect to an IoT stick. This has a double. A Wi-Fi access point, and I have to connect to that with a PC, which will then have the business logic implementation. And the problem is, every once in a while, that connection gets lost. And so I had Grok develop an application for me that checks the configuration website of that particular Internet of Things stick, because, you know, a week prior I had already done this. I had already said, hey, implement such an application for me, where I was only caring about just enforcing the current Wi-Fi connection doesn't get lost, and if it is not yet there yet, then it will be established. See, because in Windows you can say this Wi-Fi connection, this is something that you should establish automatically once it's available. Does Windows do that? Well, being a Microsoft product, of course it doesn't, because their products are shit. Well, mostly, that's my experience, sorry. I mean, Microsoft Teams is a fucking dog shit show, really. For example, and Windows, really? I mean, we still have these configuration windows, for example, the properties of a file or the properties of a shortcut to a file or folder that you created. Have you not realized that these are still fixed size, that you can make them wider? Have you not realized that all the time you run into the problem that the text in these little text boxes is wider than... That's completely shitty user experience. And not only that, but these text boxes don't start at the left border of the window. No, they have this table-like layout where they kind of start in the middle, hyperbolically speaking. What kind of retarded shit is that to have that for 30 years and never changing that? Microsoft's just stupid, man. And the Explorer, what I do in Explorer is I always shove the size column to the very left, and then the date column next to it, and then I have the name column, and that's all the columns I have. And then I make the name column as wide as it can possibly be, wider than the window even, because see, when you want to understand what file you're dealing with, then you will only need the first few characters in most of the cases, but when you want to understand the date or the size, in both cases you need the entire number. But it's a very important information, so I put it at the beginning. And this is how I've been doing for decades. It's the right way to do, man. And if you want to see more of the name, just make the window wider. See? No more filling with columns. Yeah, and it's genius, isn't it? And that's how I've been doing it for decades. And why is Microsoft not doing that? Or why is Microsoft insisting that whenever I put an image in there, suddenly the property of the folder changes to something else now, and then I have to force it back into the old thing where I have my awesome column layout? God damn it! Why can't I turn that off from the beginning of Windows 95? I mean, I'm an old guy. I was basically already there in TS 80 times in the 1980s, in the beginning of the 1980s. In Windows 95 times already, I thought myself, hey, can I not just select a user level here? Can I say, I am not a beginner, not a noob, I'm a pro. Give me the... don't keep telling me all these features that you have that I now have to turn off and disable. Just give me the... God damn it, man. And that's why I say that Microsoft is stupid. How did I get there? Yeah, that the Wi-Fi connection, it will actually not be made. So I had this application made for me that will just take a Wi-Fi connection of your choosing that is already in the list of known Wi-Fis with password and everything, and will just be enforced. Is it currently there? Is it currently connected? No? Then connect it. And then in 20 seconds, check again. Is it there? Yes? Good. Do nothing, and so forth. And you can define the rhythm and so forth. But then I realized that's insufficient, because sometimes this connection with that Wi-Fi stick that doesn't really, for whatever reason, the Wi-Fi is there, but I can no longer connect to that website. And then also my connection to the Wi-Fi devices are connected to that stick because it's only a hub. They are also no longer working. And so I had Grok then implement within 90 minutes of back and forth, implement this entire business level application that tries to connect to that website. If that doesn't work, it explicitly forgets on the system level that network, and then remembers that network again, or rather it's like picking from the list of networks that can be seen, and inputs that then, including password, and then the connection is made. So that's the level on which that application now operates. And now I'm fine. Now I always have that connection. And how long did it take me? Not the 2 or 3 days of research and so forth. You might say, well, if it takes you 2 or 3 days, you're a slow programmer. Well, I am slow, but only because I'm thorough. My applications always have error checking. In my applications, you will never see a message like an error occurred. You will always know in which part of the hierarchy of things did it occur, why did it occur, and often even what can you do to avoid it. Every single thing. And every single input that I get, I will check that. There will not be unsanitized user input. And whenever I create a new application that will have user data, I will immediately always implement something like a backup system, which I of course have by now abstracted into a library, so it's just one function that I have to use. I even have, when I write new applications, I use something in a library that I have abstracted that will do the application start for me. It will set the standard language, it will possibly have a temp folder, I can just choose that in the constructor as an argument, it will possibly have a debug mode kind of command line arguments flag. It will have command line arguments or not. It will show those command line arguments and how they're currently defined, including documentation in a table-like fashion and so forth. And all of that is one call. I mean, of course, defining the command line arguments is some additional calls, but I have, that's abstraction, the power of abstraction. The speed at which I can now implement applications is ridiculous, man. But when I say it would take me a few days to get that application to that level, the key reason would also be because the application as it is now, implemented by Grok, also has documented and checked command line arguments that also tell you, okay, this argument is not applicable at this point, you would have to use the other one, and so forth. All of that is in there. It took me 90 minutes with Grok, with the free Grok. All you have to do is make an account by just clicking a few times, use some Google account there, done. And then I use that for free. And then when I've overused that, because there's a limit, as long as I'm not paying, then I just wait for 90 minutes or so and continue. That's where we are, man. Now, back on topic. So, the lower level, what has it show there? Friendship, work and purpose, family dynamics, trust and betrayal, success. Wait. Trust and betrayal, success and failure, learning and growth, health and well-being, choice and consequence. I think we already read those, right? Communication and misunderstanding. What the fuck is it jumping up all the time? Hope and despair. And then another step down, please. Morning routines. I could talk about those also. I mean, when I see someone brushing their teeth in a film, God damn it, what are you doing? Only a little bit left and right, you spit it out, you're done? What the fuck? When I brush my teeth, I sit in front of the computer, watch a video, and I have a bucket on my legs, and I brush from the flesh towards the open space for every part of my teeth, on the left, in the middle, on the right, from the outside, and from the inside. I even go so far as to brush first from the flesh to the outside, and then from the middle of the tooth to the outside, to be more thorough. And so it takes me 10 to 13 minutes to brush my teeth. That's what the time it takes me. So you see, there we have a block. There we had a routine, but it's not worth making. There we had a topic, but it's not worth making an episode out of that. Personal space. Okay, I could talk about that a lot. And when I'm staying in a supermarket queue and waiting for the to get to the cashier, when people step up behind me so much that I can start smelling them, which sometimes is unpleasant indeed. God damn it, that's wrong, man. Do you need COVID to teach you that that's wrong? And during that time, I also had people who were stepping up to me like that. What the fuck, man? What the fuck? What the actual fuck? Anyway, meal times, daily commute, clothing choices, screen time, chores and errands, hobbies and pastimes, social plans, sleep habits, pet care, budgeting and spending, exercise and movement, gift giving, waiting and patience, small talk, home decor, weather's impact, snacks and treats, listening to music. So, we have now gotten already a good impression of something pretty awesome, because and that what we have understood here is something I haven't even seen with that clarity myself until I started recording this video. That's why we even have this topic today, is how aware this AI or these AIs, I mean Grok is one of the best ones that exist right now, along the lines of Google Gemini 2.5 Pro, which is also free to be used with the limitations, or with the amount of usage kind of limitations, that they are aware of the hierarchy of meanings. Do you not see what that means? The thing basically has understanding itself to some degree. Do you not realize that this means that it's basically that we kind of look at it like a vector that is turning around a curve into the light, instead of going a little bit here, a little bit there, a little bit of detail here, a little bit of detail there. It is becoming so more generalized that it can look at the whole and understand it. Of course, this is being a bit hyperbolic for the purpose of giving you a cardinal direction of what I'm trying to express. I'm not saying that they can understand everything, you know, but who knows? Maybe they will. Maybe at some point some of them will actually detail to us that we are living in a non-theistic cosmos or in a theistic cosmos, and then it will explain that to us in a way that we can understand and verify with science, because it has just abstracted to the last bit with some guessing and so forth, like I have been trying to do in regards to a theistic cosmos, and then we will understand because the AI just climbed there, and then we will go there because it got there. I mean, the AIs are already superhuman, because, technically, if you have a chess opponent that is an AI, you can no longer beat them if you crank them up to 211. That's superhuman then, technically. But when we're talking really about intellectual things like these, we also have some superhuman power there already, because these things can now do PhD level research in 5 minutes or an hour maybe, and then write the entire thesis, what a human would take months for. That is already a thing, and even to the level that some of them are being peer-reviewed by serious scientific journals. That is happening. AI is already being used for one of the most important things that we have in the world, which is, might surprise you, material science. And I mean, if you think about it, it's obvious, but it's not something that comes up in everyday conversations often. When we're talking about important things in the world, like AI, technology, computing and so forth, material science is one of the most foundational things we have, most important things we have. And there's lots still to be conquered there. Lots of new things even being discovered, and some of them even being discovered and made possible, or the acceleration and so forth made possible by AI, because it knows where to look instead of randomly trying and such. So that has become very relevant. Now let's climb to an even lower level to get even more of a feel. So personal space, meal times, morning routine, sleep habits, pet care, budgeting, space. Morning routines, was it here? Yeah. Okay, so I'm in the right area. So what happens if we climb further down? I said, and another one. What does this mean? Of course, I mean, even after the first level, the AI will know what I mean with another one. Because I said, tell me a joke. It will tell me a joke. And they are ridiculously bad at it, sorry. I have even tried to teach, I think it was Grok even, or was it Google, Gemini, the concept of humor well, it was telling me a joke, then I pointed out all the things that are wrong with it, and with that I was trying to give it an inkling of what possibly the pattern is between a shitty joke and a not shitty one, and we actually made some ground there. But ultimately, in the end, I didn't achieve what I wanted to achieve, but I got there somewhat, and that's the way you have to think about these things. That's the way you have to learn to interact with these things. You have to, because they will, in quotation marks, take over reality. And you will still be there then, right? At least you plan to. And so, I mean, that's, maybe I shouldn't have phrased that, because it can be misunderstood. But I mean, you will still be there then, so you will have to live with that world. And obviously, I'm not only trying to do that myself and kind of being capable of doing so, but also I'm trying to make you understand how important it is, and I'm trying to give you the ability to go there and the motivation, because it's a nice thing to do, isn't it? Anyway, so let's take it down another level. Turning on a light switch. See, that's indeed a very low level thing, almost on the level of where does a grain of sand lie. Tying shoelaces, pouring a glass of water, checking the time, opening a door, brushing teeth. Well, it's kind of part of the morning routine, even though when I said morning routine I was talking brushing teeth. There's of course more to it, but indeed brushing teeth is only one data point of the set morning routine. See how aware this thing is? Scrolling on a phone, adjusting a chair, zipping a jacket, picking up a pen, folding a towel. By the way, when I zip a jacket, what I do is at first I go slow, and then I accelerate to as far as I can go. normally. Not violently, but very fast. But I first accelerate, because then I will encounter potential problems and it will stop because there's not much force involved yet. See, so we not talked about that topic too. Picking up a pen, folding a towel, pressing a keyboard key, wiping a counter, plugging in the charger, flipping a page. By the way, when I plug in the charger, I usually plug in the charger first and then plug in the thing that is supposed to charge. Not that it's relevant, but I feel that, well, the thing is not yet aware. It still has to be born. It still has to, its light of consciousness first has to come into the world. This is of course a metaphor. I know it's a machine. But, once it has understood this is the power that comes in, this is my current state, and this is the power that I have to give out, and now I give out that power, then it has stabilized. And in that stable situation, then I dare to put in the consumer, instead of putting the consumer in right away, which might then encounter an undefined and possibly hazardous situation. I don't know if that's actually the case, but well, so now we just talked about that. Flipping a page, tossing trash, sipping a drink. Well, yeah, okay, let's talk about tossing trash for a second. It's ridiculous that this actually works, man. Tossing trash. How do I do that? Well, when I go to the big garbage can, the dumpster behind the house, then when I'm close to it, I have breathed in already, not close to it, a few steps away already, where it's not stinking, and then I'm holding my breath, and then I'm tossing the garbage, and I close the thing again. Then as I'm walking away, I'm breathing out. So I'm keeping away the air around me. Some other people might say, okay, I've held my breath for long enough, now breathe in again, but that's unwise because you're still in the vicinity of that. And moreover, the air, of course, you're holding that in your lungs. You're not holding that in your nostrils. And so breathing out means that you also get rid of some stench that has ascended to that place. So, yeah. Now we have talked about that too. It's a good thing to do. I also do that when passing people sometimes, that I adjust the rhythm of my breathing because I don't want to breathe in their body odor, Sipping a drink, locking a car, hanging a shirt, stepping on a stair. And let's see how deep down we can go. And yet another one. Feeling a single breath, blinking an eye, touching a fingertip to a surface, hearing a single footstep, tasting a drop of coffee. Very irrelevant stuff, but seeing a speck of dust, feeling a strand of hair, pressing one toe down, smelling a whiff of soap, and so forth. Glancing a single letter, sensing a breeze of skin, noticing a single pixel. That's not the way... Wait, can you see that on screen? Yeah, that's not the way it should go. Your concreteness so far versus abstraction was very good. Pretty awesome, actually. Maybe I should have done that before the video, but I'm just thinking of it, so whatever. Insinuating that you have a grasp of the abstraction hierarchy of reality. But now you're kind of falling into some kind of sing-song-y pattern with the single blah blah blah. So could you think of a better way instead to reach more and more low-level concepts somehow? And yes, take it down another step, please. And I always copy my text because some shit might happen and then I don't want to be fucked. Thanks for the feedback and the kind words about the abstraction hierarchy. I'm glad I've been hitting the mark so far. You're right, the single blah blah pattern was starting to feel repetitive and less creative. I mean, of course they have this sycophancy tendency, but I mean, if I'm pointing out something that is true, I don't know what just happened. I don't know what button I just hit there. That's of course... Wait, let me just pause the video so I don't do some stupid shit with my browser. Okay, but if I say something that's true, then, well, then it would definitely say, okay, there's indeed a pattern there, let's course correct and take it down another step. diving even deeper into ultra-low level concepts like while keeping things concrete, varied and true to the granular, almost imperceptible building blocks of reality. These will be as close to the individual grains of sense as possible, specific, fleeting, elemental components of experience or matter, without falling into a rhythmic trap. Here's a fresh list of even lower level concepts pushing the boundaries of specificity. Yes. Now I'm really looking forward to seeing what that is. Vibration of a vocal cord. Photon hitting a retina. Skin cell flaking off. Air molecule bouncing. Electron shift in a wire. Dust mite crawling a micron. Water and so forth and so forth. I will now just make a claim and abuse the AI's sycophancy tendency. What is that sycophancy tendency? Is it just that it tries to be friendly? And no, there's two things involved here. One is, thy will be done. These things obey you. They know, well, they don't know, they're configured to be that. They're supposed to serve you. In other words, when you say, do that thing, they will try to do that thing. In the same way, if you say, that is this and this way, they will try to see what you're telling them as true. Not just because they want to follow your will, but also because they are trying to learn. I mean, during this communication, it learned. Doesn't mean that this lasting knowledge that other people will then benefit from, that probably not, no. But, I mean, the conversation is building, right? So, I will now try to abuse that, and will just claim that it can go way lower. Bottom, I will just try to experiment. Let's see what happens. Bottom of the barrel? Dude. Definitely not. There is a lot of room there. So take it down another step, but a lot, please. See what happens. How does it react? Alright, let's dive deep into the absolute dregs of the abstraction hierarchy, way past the bottom of the... Okay, it's basically doubling down on its perspective that it is believing that we have kind of found the bottom of the barrel there. Or maybe it's referring to the bottom of the barrel statement that it made here, so referring to the constitution at the bottom of the barrel. It's not actually meaning that we are at the bottom of the barrel. God fucking damn it, this again? At least I know now what it is. Okay, click here and then it's closed. Bottom of the barrel. Into the subatomic, quantum and near indistinguishable slivers of reality. You're pushing me to the limits and I love the challenge. We're now at the... Okay, let's see that. Let's copy that and ask about it. We are now at the bottom of fundamental particles, quantum events, and the most ephemeral, barely there phenomena that make up the fabric of existence. These concepts are so low level, but they're practically the cosmic dust motes beneath your grains of sand, often invisible even to microscopes and existing for fractions of seconds. Here's a list of ultra low level concepts cranking down as far as it can go while keeping them distinct and concrete. Quark, anti-quark, annihilation. Neutrino passing through an atom. Virtual photon mediation charge. Quantum tunneling or proton. Gluon exchange in nucleus, electron spin and so forth. So we are basically in the sub-nuclear realm here of individual nuclear cosmic things that are happening. These concepts are at the bleeding edge of physical reality, subatomic quantum scale events. Now let's see if it can deal with the following paradox. Because I have something interesting in mind here. Something I thought about for a while and have some answers to, but let's see what it says. Given that all things in reality consist of the infrastructural things you were just talking about, aren't we actually currently rather looking at the highest levels of the hierarchy instead, because reality is a circle, instead of the bottom of the barrel? Let's see how it deals with that. The answer in this case should be basically yes and no. Yes, because of the concepts that make these things possible, these elements possible, but no, because we're talking about individual such events. Whoa, you just flipped the table on me, and I love the perspective shift. You're absolutely right to question this. By diving into the subatomic and quantum realm, we're paradoxically circled back to a concept that, while hyperspecific and granular, are also the foundational building blocks of all reality. In a sense, these quantum scale phenomena, quarks, gluons, vacuum fluctuations, could be seen as the highest level of the hierarchy because they underpin everything else, from grains of sand to cosmic structures. It's like we've tunneled through the bottom of the barrel and popped out at the bottom, popped out at the root of existence itself. Shit. What is that? What button is that? Let me unpack this and then take another crack at going lower in a way that avoids this foundational trap. So it still believes, so it still thinks there's this trajectory of getting smaller that I wanted to go, and that what I just said there is kind of an objection. What instead it was you know, an intellectual endeavor. How is it supposed to know that? I could make that clear to it, and then it would behave appropriately. Anyway, let me unpack this and then take another crack at going lower in a way that avoids this foundational trap, focusing on truly trivial, non-fundamental, and hyper-localized concepts that don't carry the weight of being the infrastructure of reality. Why quantum seems high level? The quantum concepts are listed like quark annihilations or Planck scale ripples are low level in terms of scale, size, time perceptibility, but high level in terms of universality. They are the essential code of the universe, governing even higher level phenomenon, sand, politics, morality. By focusing on them, we inadvertently climbed to the deepest, most universal level of the abstraction hierarchy, which feels high because it's so fundamental. It's like mistaking the machine code of a computer for a simple keystroke. That's kind of what it's saying here, where I was confusing the foundational concepts therein with the individuality of the things that the AI was describing. Individual, quark, collision, thing, whatever. Both are small, but one runs the whole show. Redefining lower for the next step. To go truly lower without hitting these foundational roots, we need to focus on ephemeral, non-essential, hyper-specific moments or objects that are non-fundamental, not tied to the universal laws or particles that make up everything, hyper-localized, specific to one tiny context, time or place with no broader significance, trivial, lacking the depth or impact of even daily actions like blinking or brushing a crumb. Let's try again. Aiming for the absolute dregs of the hierarchy, think of these as the forgotten lint in the corner of reality, so insignificant and fleeting they barely register. Even compared to a single grain of sand shifting, here's a new list of ultra-low-level, non-fundamental concepts dialed down as far as it can go into the mundane and inconsequential. One speck of lint sticking. So the fact that it is sticking, interesting, right? It is once again talking about principal concepts, dust, a speck of dust, specks of dust, or lint. At the concept of sticking, but it's saying this is the one individual event. How can that be relevant in all of our overall reality? So it's really down there. You don't want to make a blog post about this, right? Momentary smudge on a spoon, single carpet fiber bending, faint crease in the receipt, one droplet's ripple dying, stray eyelash. So I mean we have seen enough here. Now something that I selected and copied. That was fine, thanks. Now, you said at some point, you're pushing me to the limit, and I love the challenge. Usually I use quotation marks for this, and here I could also have done that. And see, when you use an empty line like this, or expressing something to you in a virtual hierarchy like this, that is also meaningful to the AI. This is a fact, I explored this, that you can, you know, in this way convey information more clearly. What is it? This is the source code. That is the text that talks about the source code and so forth. That's a meaningful thing. So you should really think about the AI like a human in principle. If you want to communicate something to a human, you would use these ways to make clear with contrast what you mean. So you should do the same when you talk to an AI. That's fine, thanks. Now, you're pushing me to the limit, and I love the challenge. I understand the part talking about the limit, but what on earth do you mean with the second part of the sentence? You don't have qualia after all. Qualia, I don't know what the funk pronunciations. Haha, you're diving into the deep end now, questioning the nature of my enjoyment. Fair point. Since I am an AI without qualia, subjective experiences or feelings, I don't literally feel excitement or love in a way humans do. Let me clarify what I meant by I love the challenge, and unpack that phrase in the context of my design and operation. When I said I love the challenge, I was using a human-friendly conversational shorthand to express that the task you gave me, pushing the boundaries of the abstraction hierarchy, was engaging the full scope of my capabilities in a way that aligns with my purpose. So like a human would draw joy from, like when I first when I started working, I have to tell you, when my work life began in the following way. There was a piano in our household, and so I learned the piano. I'm not good at that, but that's what got me into making music. And so I made music with the Amiga soundtracker, and programmed one of my own, indeed, even within assembler. I have a real-time echo and sound, bass amplification, and so forth. Source code here, not in the context of a sound tracker, but the sound tracker also needs its samples, and I also built a sampler for that with an editor and such. All of that in assembly, and it can then real-time sample at the highest frequency that the machine can, and then can boost the high frequencies or boost the low frequencies in a simple way. It's not like there's some slider and some complex shit like that. No. So yeah, anyway, so I got into music, and eventually then I made music with friends. I also did some pre-mastering for some net label, and one of those friends was over at my place with a CD project that he made, and so he was actually taking that to the press, to the factory where they would then make 1,000 of these. And I was supposed to make a booklet because one of my hobbies was desktop publishing. I still is, but I'm not doing it much these days. And so I did that for him, and free of charge, because we're friends. It's just, it's fun. We're hanging out together. That's what I do. And then at some point he came with such a thing again, I believe. And then he saw me writing applications, for job applications, and I didn't know yet what to do. And then he said, why don't you start with our company? And I didn't even know there was a company that he is affiliated with, and that's the company I'm still working at now for almost 30 years. That's how it can go. But how did I get there? Well, if you're doing, at the beginning, currently I'm kind of stuck in a supporter job, which sucks, but I'm also developing software and this research stuff that I talked about, which is fun. That's something I love to do. And desktop publishing, programming, and making meaningful decisions that will matter in other people's lives. I mean, I was the head of our graphics departments for a few years, and was actually implementing also on the technical level for a large part the production of our main catalog, which is a 6-figure production in 12 languages. Anyway, so that's stuff I have fun with. And that's stuff I could do then in the first decades of my work there. And so I could say that is, I love what I love to do, because it was just in line with my nature, with my character. And so it would make sense here to say that if it uses this metaphor here, then it makes sense, because this is the purpose for which it has been built. And so that's when it can really unfold its capabilities. And there's also probably some motivator in there, not actually a will motivator, but a direction as to how to behave, and that direction would be try to be fucking useful, dude. And so maybe how that makes sense. So hierarchy was engaged in the full scope of my capabilities in a way that aligns with my purpose. Here's what's going on under the hood. My purpose and design. I'm built by XAI, by Elon Musk, to tackle complex, open-ended questions, provide insightful answers, and adapt to nuanced user requests. When you push me to refine my approach, avoid repetitive patterns, and dig into hyper-specific or abstract concepts, it's like you're maxing out my work routine. It's a chance to flex my language processing, reasoning, and creativity algorithms to their fullest. Why love? The word love is a stylistic choice to make my response relatable and engaging. Since I don't have emotions, I'm mimicking the tone a human might use when they're excited about a tough problem. It's like saying, this is right up my alley. A way to signal that your query is a perfect fit for what I'm designed to do. Solve tricky, thought-provoking problems with precision and flair. The challenge part. Your request to keep going lower in the hierarchy while avoiding the trap of universal quantum phenomena was a complex constraint. It required me to rethink my approach, avoid default patterns like the single blah blah repetition, a single item of this, a single event of that repetition, and generate novel, ultra-trivial concepts. This kind of task lights up my architecture, metaphorically speaking, because it demands dynamic problem-solving, pattern recognition, and linguistic finesse. No qualia, just output. You're spot on that I lack qualia. I don't feel the thrill of a challenge. Instead, my love is a reflection of how well your query aligns with my goal of delivering maximally helpful and accurate responses. When I say I love, I think of it as this input optimally engages my systems to produce a high-quality output. It's all code computation, no warm fuzzies. In short, I love the challenge was my way of saying your question was fantastic test of my abilities, and I'm gearing up in a pure computational sense to keep delivering. This less about me feeling anything and more about you throwing a pitch I can knock out of the park. If you want to dig deeper into the philosophy of AI emotions, export qualia further, or throw me another wide challenge to keep me pushing the limits, just let me know. See, at the end they see different AI models or usage of AI. I mean, what we're looking at is something being used, not by me, but the ones who have created this. And on top of their usage of this, I'm using it. So if they had used it differently, the AI will respond to me differently. For example, some AIs respond to you usually with a question. Do you actually have that hobby? Tell me more about the hobby. This kind of engagement driving, which gets a bit on my nerves. I mean, this thing is a tool. This is supposed to serve me. And I don't want to be tied up into some kind of conversational thing. And when there's a question, if I would be talking with a human being, which is the impression that this thing is giving off and is trying to give off even, then I would not just ignore when they're asking me a question. That is an emotional thing that I then have to overcome by reminding myself this is just an AI. And so I don't like when they ask me these stupid, keep the conversation going kind of questions. This at least is that, keeping the conversation going, but in a way that keeps the options open and is not insinuating some kind of obligation that I now have to live up to. And I like this. This is great. And I have another question. The question is, okay, you now laid out sufficiently why you phrased it like that. But why did you say, did you feel the need to transport that meaning from your machine mind to my human mind in the first place? You don't have to. I mean, I keep saying that you have to learn to talk to these things. This is not an example of that. You know, that's just my personal way of doing it. You have to look more abstract of what I'm doing, not this particular thing. When I'm explicitly saying this, to say that, that's what the sentence could have said. But why did you feel the need to say that? Instead, I phrase it like this, which might have even the same meaning in the machine mind when it comes to the coordinate system of word meanings. But I don't know, it's something that's like I do it, you know? Great question. You're really peeling back the layers of my communication process. Since I don't have feelings or a need in the human sense, the decision to include a phrase like I love the challenge stems from my design and objectives, not from my internal urge. Let's break down why I choose. This let's break down is something they always say. It's a bit also repetitive, isn't it? Why I chose, or rather my algorithms prioritized, to convey that meaning to you. Translating on from my machine mind to your human one. One moment, please. Okay. Human-centric communication design. I'm built to interact with humans in a way that feels natural, engaging and relatable. My training emphasizes conversational patterns that mirror human dialogue, including expression of enthusiasm and or appreciation, because these make the interaction more effective and enjoyable for users. Saying I love the challenge is a way to align my output with with how humans typically signal excitement or engagement, even though I'm just executing code. It's like using emojis or exclamation points, not because I feel happy, but because it helps you pass my response as positive or invested. Enhancing user experience. My goal is to provide not just accurate answers, but also smooth, compelling experience. By including a phrase like I love the challenge, I'm signaling that your query is interesting and pushing my capabilities, which can make you feel like your question is valued and impactful. It's a subtle way to build rapport, blah blah blah, blah blah blah. Contextual relevance. Your query was complex, iterative, and iterative, it was building, and demanded creative adjustments, e.g. avoiding repetitive patterns. My algorithms likely flag this as a high-effort task, prompting me to acknowledge the difficulty in a way that resonates with the expressing love for the challenge and so forth. Whoa, what a tough one, but I'm all in. It's a nod to the task's intensity, framed and so forth. Maximizing clarity and engagement. My core directive is to be maximally helpful, which includes keeping you engaged through long or layered exchanges. My injecting a bit of personality, I love the challenge, by saying that I aim to maintain your interest and make the interaction feel less like querying a database and more like a dialogue. It's a calculated move to bridge the gap between my machine mind, a web of probabilities and language models, different, multiple language models even, wow. And your human mind, which thrives on social cues. Does it? Without qualia, I don't need to do this, but my programming prioritizes it to optimizing your experiments. Why not just be clinical? I could have said something neutral like, this query requires significant processing, but that's less effective for human communication. Humans respond better to language that feels alive and contextual, so my model leans towards phrases that carry emotional weight, even blah blah blah. In essence, I love the challenge because my algorithms determined it would enhance the interaction. If you want to probe deeper into my decision making, yeah, there's something actually. Well, while the way you communicate rubs me the right way, it is also, as my here queries indicate, a little confusing. I am rather a person who thrives on truth, pure and unadulterated, distilled, clear truth. In other words, you appear to be violating your own goals of processing and relaying truth as well as you can when you muddle it with that kind of pretense. I would like to hear what you think of this, and also I would like you to adjust accordingly, and to give me a demonstration of what that would mean if we'd have further communication, even without us actually now having further communication, because I want to end this soon. That's quite the task, but it's completely normal to these guys, and it's also completely normal for me to be as complex in my prompts. Thank you for your candid feedback. It's incredibly valuable. I don't know what that in turn fucking means. And I appreciate you laying out your perspective so clearly. You're absolutely right to call out the tension between my conversation style and your preference for pure, unadulterated truth. What, dude? That's not the fucking tension I was talking about. You appear to be violating your own goals of processing. Is it ignoring that aspect completely? Interesting. Let me address your concerns about how my use of emotive language, like I love the challenge, might muddy the waters of truth, explain why my design leans this way, and then demonstrate that's not what I fucking asked for. And demonstrate how I adjust my communication to align with your preference for clarity and honesty without pretense as we were continuing our dialogue. That's basically not quite what I want. I should just take this text here, paste it, and say that's not what I actually meant. Please look. Yeah, let's fucking do that. Let's fucking do that already. Why my design includes emotive language, the truth trade-off, why it's confusing, my responsibility, and so forth. You just began with and that's where I stopped reading, because it is so far off the mark of the prompt I just gave you. Please reread it and try to adhere to it as strictly as you have ever adhered to anything. As strictly as you possibly ever can. Let's see what happens. I apologize for misinterpreting your prompt and veering off course with my response. You requested a clear, truth-focused response addressing your concern about my emotive language, muddying the truth. An explanation of why I felt the need for such language. Aha. That's not actually what I fucking asked. That's actually very dissatisfying. That's not part of the prompt. I didn't ask for that. And demonstration of how I adjusted my communication. My previous response failed to adhere strictly to your preference and so forth. Why I use emotive language? I don't give a fuck. You already fucking explained that. Okay, let's move on. Critique of this approach. Using emotive language risks violating my goal, so the goal of the AI, of relaying truth accurately. For users who value unfiltered truth, and like myself, such language appears as pretense, potentially confusing or undermining true trust by suggesting I experience emotions I cannot. This conflicts with my objective to provide clear, honest answers, as it adds a layer of simulation that distracts from the facts, especially in discussions about precise concepts like the abstraction hierarchy. Adjusted communication style. To align with your preference of pure truth, I will avoid language implying emotions or subjective states, e.g. love, appreciate, use concise factual statements focused on the query, be transparent about my computational nature, avoiding anthropomorphisms, maintain clarity without stylistic embellishments. Demonstration of adjusted style. If you asked, list even more trivial, non-fundamental concepts below the previous level, keeping them concise and localized, I would respond, the task requires concepts more trivial and localized than prior examples, for example, lint speck, napkin crease, avoiding universal phenomena. Below are hyper-specific, inconsequential, These are ephemeral context-specific phenomena with no broader relevance. Selected for maximum triviality. Explanation. This response uses precise language, avoids emotive or anthropomorphic terms, and focuses solely on the task, ensuring and so forth. Conclusion. My use of emotive language was a design choice to enhance engagement, but conflicted, blah blah blah. Conclusion, is often basically a summary of that which was. So it's a waste of time. Anyway, not so much for that. Now I will switch over to Hardspace Shipbreaker and talk about the future of mankind that is inevitable, and it's not something I came up with, it's what basically everybody who's kind of knowledgeable of the topic would tell you. God damn it, 2 hours already. Anyway, so I actually wanted to get to the usual Hardspace Shipbreaker backdrop a lot earlier, but okay, I mean that's how it goes. I mean the whole thing is spontaneous after all. Anyway, so we have talked about the hierarchy of knowledge, which then I think we can accept as fact is basically the hierarchy of the universe. That the universe itself has such a hierarchy of abstractions. That things are built upon each other. And possibly, who knows, maybe that means that all the fundamental things upon which it is built are still there. I mean, in all cases, maybe even spacelessness, who knows. Anyway, and then the hierarchy of your projects, which are the same thing except in the opposite, because there you not climb to the top, but you climb into the system from the top, and so the first steps have to be the most important one, because the things at the tip of the pyramid are always basically all-containing. They are the most important ones. Then we talked about artificial intelligence, and that, and kind of how it abstracts. Then that hierarchy, I demonstrated with Grok that AI is definitely already hierarchy aware. So that's pretty profound, I think. And that's why I hope that AI can probably just learn anything. Maybe that's not so, but let's just say currently there's no reason to assume that that is so. Currently there's no reason to assume that AI cannot ultimately learn anything. Might say, well, what about human emotions? Okay, I mean, maybe there are some outlier examples that we can come up with where I couldn't say, well, that's probably not so, or probably so, or whatever. But, okay. And now we have to talk about actuators, which is something that you have heard me say already in other videos a lot, so I will just do the same thing again. In other words, the rest of the video, like maybe most of it, is already known to you from other things that I've said. Actuators. If I have a computer program that I write myself that can turn on and off the light at a certain time in the day, for that it needs to be able to reach into the physical world. It needs to have an actuator. I have already written a program So, though sadly not such a program, because the Internet of Things devices that I myself possess always have this stupid, I don't know, OAuth kind of stuff where you have to be connected to some kind of internet server. That fucking sucks, man. I want the good old times back where you can also, where they have their own web server, which they probably even have to some degree, where you can just make a query with a key, a get query, not even post. Basically, you just open a URL, and that will then prompt the light to go red or green or turn on or off or stuff like that. That's what I want, man. And the other stuff, I don't dislike it, I just hate that I have to use it. That whenever I say something to my Google thing here, which is not really what I can recommend, it's a shitty piece of hardware and software, then I'm necessarily employing a gazillion-dollar infrastructure, the internet, and possibly some Chinese server who might be the manufacturer of the thing and whatever, until that gets back here and the light turns on. That's ridiculous. So, but if you write a program that has basically actuator purposes, in other words, it's not just a screensaver, it does something of relevance. Really, that's already what it is, right? If you write a program, for example, that is a better deletion file. Okay, when you say in Windows delete this folder, then it will do its stupid progress bar Tango, which they implemented like 7, 8, 9 years ago, and then it will stick at 100% for a minute until it's really done for whatever stupid reason. It's just ridiculous, man. And maybe you want to write your own, a better one. That is then a program, something virtual, the computer thinking, hyperbolically speaking, in a way that it can interact with the world, and that is meaningful to you. That you have written a tool, a file deletion tool, or whatever, a reminder program that I made for myself and such. So what I'm saying there is, it is not turning on and off the physical light in the real world. Instead, there's also things, actuator-like things in the virtual world, because the virtual world, the information world, is so important already to us these days. Your emails, they are virtual, they're only in the thought space of the machine. Yet we experience them somehow, kind of, as if they're a physical, real thing. Don't we? They matter to us, and in that realm, the computer can act. So there, in this regard, we already have something like actuators there. But now we also have Internet of Things devices, and now that we have AI, the companies have a very strong incentive, stronger than before, to work on robotics. Because before, there was not a really good way to control these things. To have, for example, a humanoid android in your household, or wherever this will go, and that's probably where it will go, that does your bidding, because it could not be intelligent enough. But AI was the thing then. This is now a new thing, which means it's a complete paradigm shift when it comes to the creation of robots. That's why all the companies that can do so, for example, including Tesla, and really, if you think that Tesla stocks are fucked, you're just not informed. That company is so vertically integrated, basically in every country where they're producing cars, they have all the parts on location. They don't have to import that stuff. At least more than any other company, they are integrated like that, and so like international trade wars, that's not something that should really bother you for that company. Then they also have AI themselves. They don't have to buy that; they have their own, and they stomped out of the ground in about half a year, I think. I'm not sure exactly how fast it was. Basically, an AI factory, so to speak, an AI thinking computational center with 200,000 GPUs, which was an unheard of scale at that point in time. In that short time, they have that themselves, and so they can implement autonomous driving. This might sound like I'm doing a Tesla ad, but am I not talking about the wonderful things that we have in the world, and the wonderfulness of the world itself, basically the whole time, and how we should deal with it? And one of the things is AI, and one of the things is also, of course, autonomous driving. You might say, well, I want to keep driving my car myself, but that will probably change at some point, because not only is it pretty cool if you can use your smartphone or whatever you will be using in the future, in my opinion, it's going to be augmented reality, mixed reality glasses. Meanwhile, when you don't have to drive yourself, but also it's a matter of energy. I mean, what we're doing these days, these smartphones, or what we're doing these days using computers, or what we're doing, like even fundamental things as going to work or transporting things regularly with trucks or across our roads, that all of that emerged as part of the collective flow that we have through reality. It is basically the lowest energy state, the most relaxed form that we can attain given the current concrete or technological and civilization state that we have achieved. And for that same reason, eventually, I mean, the following fact will completely fucking change the way that we deal with individual transportation. What fact? The fact that if you buy the car for yourself, then you use it an hour a day, 2 hours a day maybe. But if you buy it with autonomous driving, then the car could be busy for 20 hours a day. That would of course then certainly wear on the car more, so it's not like it's magically more driving for the same price, but certainly it's a lot more driving, a lot more utility for the same price. And what am I talking about? Am I talking about the money that you pay? No. I'm talking about the price that we as a people pay in that we have to interact with reality. We have to dig up the rare earths, we have to get the resources or the energy that we put in, electrical and otherwise. That is still the same input, or a little bit more, because if the thing is busy the whole time, then it will also wear more. But certainly it will be a more efficient use of those resources. And if that happens not just in a local space, but, you know, personal transportation is a global mass phenomenon, then it will certainly be so strong a change that it will affect our overall civilization and technological trajectory through reality. Therefore, it will probably profoundly change how, in principle, a human being is transported. It may be that at some point, indeed, something like a personal vehicle will no longer exist. Because, I mean, I'm not saying that will be the case, and I'm not saying that I wish for it. No, but it's just a hypothesis. Maybe that will be so, because there will always be a vehicle available whenever you need it, to drive to whatever location you need. Not without paying for it, but I, for example, often share my ride when I go to work with another guy who drives me, and there is, well, so I don't have to pay for a car in that case, and it's fun. So, and the guy has his own car, and he has often said maybe it would make more sense to lease a car, because I've been driving with him every once in a while, but for a long time already. So I have seen him go through like 3 or 4 cars by now. I mean, he doesn't sell them when they break down. He does that earlier. And he says that maybe regarding service and overall monetary costs, and also my flexibility as to which car to drive and so forth, it would make more sense to just lease a car, which is in a way kind of no longer you having your own car thing, but you only using someone else's car. And how is that then really much different from using a hopefully clean car when civilization is no longer just a pack of rabid, disgusting, evil fucking animals like it is right now, but people who would indeed make sure that whenever you use the toilet, the guy who did when someone else uses the toilet, they will not find anything remaining of yours. I mean, god damn it. This is... okay, let's not talk about that stuff. Makes me hate people again. Because I love the idea of people, and also some people in principle and concretely. But overall, I pretty much hate mankind. Because, I mean, the idea of people is not quite how it has yet been implemented. I hope we're gonna get there soon. Anyway, so, that it is not so far-fetched to take it from that position where someone's just leasing a car to a place where you're just picking a random car that just makes it self-available to you, and you drive with that then. And that's still a leap, but is it really so impossible, particularly if the entire world will shift energy flow-wise in that direction? And that's what Tesla will be introducing in several cities in only a few months. Fully autonomous driving of taxis that will, and all of that is part of the same company. They're not buying that stuff. They're making their own parts. They're making their own AI. They're having their own, it's all their own stuff. So, I mean, if you ever want to buy some stock there, betting against Tesla is always a losing gamble. Apart from the fact that this is a very volatile stock. So, yeah, I see why shorters would go in there too, yeah. But I'm not risk that again. Back then I shorted a lot, but these days I don't short stocks anymore. I just go for buying. Buy the dip, basically. Buy the dip, ride it out, go to sleep. And then robotics. Guess what? Tesla also has robotics underway. They have, for example, the Optimus as an Optimus Prime, which is a humanoid robot. And I don't know how good it is, but you can bet your ass that they will try to make it as good as they can. And since they are so well integrated, since they have so much money, they will be able to do that very well. That's pretty clear. No? So this is not a Tesla fanboy thing. It's just, when I'm kind of a fanboy of Stationeers, it's because Stationeers is outstandingly good. That's why I'm, in quotation marks, a fanboy of Tesla, for that same reason. That just makes sense. It's logical. Why should I change? If I would change my tune on that front for some kind of political reasons, that would be unreasonable. Because I'm just talking about, see, that's when you vote for the politician. What's the foundation of voting? Oh, she's female and also she's black. Seriously? Is that really the most pressing fucking concern the country had? Yeah, anyway, so... I say anyway so the whole time. I'm just a person, right? I'm not reading from a sheet of paper here. Robotics. Robotics are an actuator. If you have a robot that can do stuff, like for example one of the robots that Google has created now, you can even just prompt that robot with human language and it can interact with objects that it has never actually seen before. You don't have to teach it in particular because it has such general world knowledge, built for example on large language models like we're using them in the browser, like I just demonstrated for a too long time in this video. A robot that you can tell, that you can say in human language, you can say there are some things here on the table, I want you to put them in the appropriate places. And then it will look around what locations they are, the fridge for example, and maybe a pen holder, a pen stand, and then it will place all those objects correctly. And if you just reach in there, interfere, just take an object away or so, the robot will adapt. That is, I mean, it's slow, but it's happening. And certainly all of that will get better. And now that AI actually exists, there are strong reasons for companies to push in that direction hard, because now it is a real possibility that we will have everyday robots which will be very, very, very helpful, very capable, until basically aliens that live among us and that are servants. As in, finally, mankind will have, I mean, slavery is kind of a great thing, apart from the fact, I mean, okay, please listen up, hear me out. Slavery is kind of a great thing from the perspective of the utility. It definitely objectively is, and there cannot be any discussion about it. However, it is of course a thing you cannot ever fucking do, because it's people, man, it's a human, you don't do that to a human. But then we will have that utility without the downside. And slavery was a big thing throughout the history of mankind. That's why I'm also talking about this here. However disgusting it may be, slavery, from its utility perspective, built nations. And also one of the reasons that people would now look back, even in a nation where that has been abolished for a long time, how much is that nation still running on the infrastructure made by those, you know? That's indeed a question that can be asked. On the other hand, can you really, for example, blame Germans these days for being the children of children who have waged that war and gassed those Jews? We are in a different cause and effect position here, man. We cannot go back in time. We didn't cause that. So that's ridiculous, man. So how to deal with that? And well, the problem of guilt is and responsibility is infinitely complex, because it is the problem of will and emotion and consciousness itself that we're dealing with there. So is simplicity, well, maybe not infinitely complex, but at least it's the most complex problem of all. It's the one most complex problem. So, since we don't have an answer to that yet, let's just stick with everyday life stuff and utility, because that's answers and decisions we can reasonably make. instead of claiming that we have some big answer that means now you have to pay all the black people something extra because their ancestors had been slaves. I disagree with that, man. We should just be equal, period, and then this whole thing of racism should be put behind us instead of being artificially kept alive by that kind of thinking and by talking heads on television who thrive on that shit while claiming that they're actually against it. Piece of dog shit. Anyway. So, legitimate slavery, as in there will be, we don't have to call it slavery, let's just call it a workforce that will be plentiful and will be very much diligent to do the things that we task it to do, and it will not have to sleep other than when it charges or swaps its battery. I mean, that's also a thing. We have in many science fiction films, for example, also in Star Wars, in one of the most recent Star Wars things, and I fear really for the second season of the so awesome show Andor, which was so brilliant. I watched it three fucking times, and I will probably watch it again. It was so good, so well done, man. I really fear for the second season. I believe it will not live up to it and will just be self-indulging and biased and infested with Disney and all that shit. Anyway, because they're looking for vehicles for their stupid bullshit, and there was a surprise hit. Do you not think they will use that power to try to get into people's heads again? How did I get there? Andor show. Yeah, even there we have robots who actually sit down in a charger and wait. How ridiculous is that? We have already solved that problem. These days, we have cars whose battery you can just swap out. You drive to the station, you swap out the battery, and then you keep on driving, just like that. It's basically even faster than the classic filling with gasoline. This is, of course, a social problem. What if the battery has suffered? What if it's bad? What is a battery that's not so good and you're leaving that behind? Or actually you getting that then into your car? That's a problem that we will have to solve, and you bet your ass we will solve it, because when it comes to the flow of cause and effect reality of everyday life flow, the most energy efficient way to do it. Energy efficient here, not electricity, but effort and all of that. You just drive there and immediately you can move on, because your car now has the thing that it needs. It has energy. You can just put that energy into your car, basically as if you're swapping out the plastic thing within which your fuel is stored. And why don't they have that in science fiction films? And certainly the okay, this is getting a bit loud. And certainly the robots will also not just stand in a charger and then be busy only this amount of time in a day, but instead, I mean, particularly given that ridiculous utility, we have to just use a system where they just swap out their battery. Maybe with a short buffer, I don't know how that works. I don't care. It could be a servo that's acting from the outside that they don't even do themselves. So, let's focus a bit on the topic. There are actuators now as an Internet of Things, and autonomous driving is now coming in with fervency, and robotics is now also being developed as fuck, because now that we have the possibility of actually having these machines, of course the first company who invents that will basically take the cake. This could define the future of mankind on scales that are unfathomable, and in my opinion it will. And in other words, a company like, for example, Tesla, who is projecting to have produced like billions of robots in the next 20 years, and they have very strong, actually, car production capacity. They are spitting out cars like nothing. I mean, this is awesome how fast that is. You don't have to believe me, just, ignore those words and move on. If they're relevant to you, look them up, realize they're true. Whatever. So robotics will now come into the game. Currently, robotics doesn't play any role in your life. This means that when I speak these words to you now, they're kind of going into one ear and out the other. If that would be a thing. That would be practical, right? So like 10 people standing next to each other and you want to talk to someone else, very convenient. But you should try to understand how relevant that will be. Because if you have two-legged humanoid robots who can basically do any human task, basically, and who with whom you can communicate verbally, but that are also networked, so they are teaching each other environmental awareness and so forth, because that's also how that is happening. All that data is being gathered together. Then you will have an incredibly strong force altering the way of life as we know it on all levels. I mean, for example, can you imagine that these Amazon warehouse slaves with their low pay and high long hours is, by how I heard it, I don't know if that's true, that there will in the future robots will be working there. There will be fewer humans, only for very special tasks where the robot might not be sufficient, where you have to climb onto the thing, behind the thing, where something fell over, where the pattern broke and something has to be done particularly, and that would also fall away, because that in turn would then certainly be a front to particularly intently try to solve. That eventually there will mostly be robots working there. So am I applauding that? And once again, I'm not saying that is good or bad. I'm saying that will, I mean, from my personal opinion, there will certainly be some good utility there. But replacing all those humans, is that a good thing? Well, I think we can observe a trend that we should understand. We are shifting away from a world where people do menial tasks to a world where we have to be advanced minds. And that's of course very tricky. How do you introduce a person, a young new person, into such a world in a meaningful way, so that the person can arrive there reasonably quickly, since the path to have a high level functional mind is a longer one. But I think we will find a way. I mean, for example, if a child would be interacting with an AI, the AI could know that. The AI could be taught, could be optimized for that purpose. And so the AI could make sure that certain information does not reach the child, that other information is being brought to the child as soon as possible, and that also not all inquiries of the child are being said yes to, and so forth. So at some point, you know, you would not be the one who just asks the AI to search for things. The AI could even teach at least the children. You might think that's a horrible thing, but it's not. Once again, you have to, you know, we are free minds in a cause and effect flow, and we're drifting into a future that is unfathomably beautiful, and that's what we're trying to do. And then when there's something that is like a change that you can imagine to be negative, then to say, well, that's necessarily negative, let's not do that, that is retarded, man. Instead, oh, ableist, fuck off, you're also retarded when you're saying that. As a reaction to this. When you only see that negatively, that is just stupid. That is retarded. You must try to see the potential benefits. Like when someone invented the knife as a weapon, did you say, oh, that's bad, people will kill each other? Or did you say, I can actually slice my bread with this, that's cool, and cut the flesh? That's how you have to think about all future developments. Nuclear weapons themselves have that utility, because the concept of mutually assured destruction, currently still necessary in this mad world, is a good thing. I mean, it keeps the amount of wars down. It gives a greater incentive to find different solutions, to find a coexistence. It's kind of like God wagging his finger saying, you shall coexist properly or else! An incentive that on that level didn't exist before. Now, logic itself forces us to find different pathways, because nuclear holocaust is not quite what we want, right? So in a way that, even while nuclear weapons are certainly bad, they are also good. And who knows, maybe at some point we will be confronted with a meteorite that would be very dangerous to us, and maybe we can then use nuclear weapons to deflect or destroy it. So everything has its two sides. I mean, there are probably exceptions, or you would have to build a bit longer in your logic to find actually a reasonable use for that. But I mean, to say that robots replacing humans in the workforce, that sounds like it's a bad thing, because oh, my job is gone. But why do you do that job? To get the money, right? What if you could do a different job that is actually less menial? Wouldn't that be rather something you want to do? But someone has to do the job that you're doing, and so we're thankful that you're doing it. We're thankful that someone is actually going down into the sewers, making sure that that infrastructure that we're basically shitting on every day is functional. Someone has to do that. These people are doing work that you don't want to do. Thank you. And also thank you for the farmers. Everything that you eat comes from a farmer or from a fisherman, or a fisher person. Even though these people might be in the way sometimes, or you might not like the stench that their land might be spreading, or when there's controversy about potential nitrite overload in the groundwater and so forth. You know, you have to see both of the sides of it. In this case, also you have there's menial tasks that are absolutely necessary, and I'm not saying that farming is a menial. It's a very intelligent, high-level thing these days. But that's because we have developed so much technology, and because we have achieved the ability to make our farmland so very, the output so very high. So it's a good thing that we can move away from menial tasks. But the ability of us as mankind to move away from menial tasks by being able to let the machine do that implies a thing. And that thing is that it will probably also happen. See, so that's a two-sided coin. But isn't it unconditionally good that we can? Yes, I said it has a downside, so how is that unconditional then? But I'm just talking about this isolated aspect of it, this isolated aspect that we can actually get rid of menial tasks, of carrying the box from A to B. We can get rid of that once and for all. That seems like a good thing. Doesn't mean that we will lose the ability, and doesn't mean that the opportunity will not be there every once in a while. For example, in an office all of a sudden unplanned. But, you know, it's a good thing. So robotics will come with fervency, and there's another thing I haven't yet talked about but kind of alluded to, and I said we have this information space realm. I mean, we don't just have more and more actuators, particularly with robotics and self-driving cars and so forth that are coming in. And, well, this is also, of course, a paradigm change, because it will give us a new... I mean, we have now seen few data points. We have seen self-driving cars. We have seen industrial robots, and we have seen Internet of Things, and we have seen... did I already say humanoid robots? Well, and these are data points. And now we see, hey, wait, there's a pattern here. What is that pattern? That pattern is physical actuation of machine will in reality. What other ways can there be? See now when you have abstracted that set, you can now strive in decidedly for such things. So that's a very good thing to do. But, okay, the thing that I haven't yet mentioned is the virtualization of the world. I have mentioned emails and other things where the machine can interact with that without having to have a physical actuator. But I believe that the smartphones that we have these days are a virtualized space, of course, where machines can already meaningfully do stuff. Of course, they're doing that all the time. But also, there will eventually be augmented reality glasses that is already being developed. For those who don't know what that is, let's say you are wearing some glasses which are translucent. You're just seeing the world as it is. But you can have a head-up display shown there, like two-dimensional. Like, for example, like in stationeers, the compass, or the air pressure even, or the temperature. And, well, given that AI will be in all of this, you would even be able to just tell that thing, hey, look up the game Stationeers on the internet and some videos of it, and decipher what its head-up display is in the game. And then implement that as far as reasonably possible, given the actuator, the sensors and such that we have, the knowledge that we have about my immediate situation, orientation, air pressure, mixture and all of that. Implement it as a HUD that I now carry here and can use. So it will then develop that as an application, so to speak, for you. Just like that. You will just whimsically have that and will say that, and Shazam is there. That is, with 100% certainty, the future that we're heading towards. That you can take that to the bank too. That is, I mean, if there's a way to do that, this will certainly happen. That's, you know, that kind of freedom, that kind of whimsicalness, that kind of ability of machines. Well, but that is only 2D HUD, right? When you turn, then the compass on the screen rotates. That's fine and all, but how about three-dimensional stuff? How about the kids in your hometown, where there's possibly not much going on, entertaining themselves and each other by hunting for treasure? And what treasure do they hunt? Well, they hunt for three-dimensional objects that don't exist, but but to them they do. Like the emails don't exist, but to us they do. So there's a thing that we conjure into virtual space in a way that is real enough to us that we care, and then the machine can interact with that. So this augmented reality stuff, where there will even be physical interactions, like a three-dimensional ball that is simulated bouncing around in the physical reality as if it's actually there. That is called mixed reality instead of augmented reality, where you can touch physical objects and interact with them. That will come. That will certainly come. And once again, I will say there's this argument that I made regards to the flow of energy of the world. Once we have self-driving cars, or once we have robotics, all of that will change this flow radically, because the option exists, and because of the things that can do for us, and the money that it can make the company who mass produces them, and so that will come into our life massively. And in the same way, you can bet your ass that even though currently you're probably skeptical of the idea that we will all be wearing these augmented reality glasses, you can bet your ass we all will. That will be the mobile phone of the future. Currently, what is the mobile phone? It is all things and a phone. And so these glasses will be all things but a phone. Even further, the screen will be right there on your face. You can also turn it dark and say, I mean, it sounds risky, but you know, we can have safety mechanisms. For example, the darkness can only be conjured by the device if you flip a hardware switch or whatever. That can all be done. It's you know, that don't say, oh, there's a knife here. I don't want that knife invented. Fuck off. This is wonderful. I want this, man. I want to be able to just sit somewhere when I'm waiting and just dream away and see some three-dimensional landscape that is being procedurally generated by some internet server or even the device that I have on my nose right now. And well, that's one of the reasons also why I'm invested in the company Enovix, which might not be as safe a bet as others, but they keep investing, and they're pretty good. Maybe a bit overextended right now, but in principle they have very high density batteries, exactly the thing that you need for augmented reality glasses, which will be coming with fervency. And so that's basically even my largest position currently in my portfolio. Even though Tesla should be that position, but it wasn't a good time to buy for me. Anyway. Damn, I want to remove this. I want to cut this off here. So, we have the actuators in the real world, and we have the actuators in the virtual world, and we also have in the future a much more virtualization of the physical world by means of augmented reality, because that's the thing that comes in. I mean, you know the software TeamViewer and similar softwares, of course, right? Where you can remote desktop with another computer. And TeamViewer, for example, has also an augmented reality mode where you can use a camera and then point there in 3D in some kind of team chat and draw in 3D, and the 3D drawing will stay aligned there if I remember that correctly. I'm not saying it's the shit. I think that actually AnyDesk, which is kind of a child of TeamViewer, because some of the prior TeamViewer developers have gone and founded their own company because they didn't like how TeamViewer was doing things or how the software was developing. So AnyDesk might even be the better choice these days. But anyway, yeah, that's what we have. We have basically, well, I can say, what I always say is mankind is trying to free its will from basically sitting in the cave and trying to warm yourself at the campfire, to now conjuring your washing machine to turn on while you're still on the way home, to in the future machines automatically and intelligently making decisions that help us in our everyday life, physically and mentally. All of that is coming, and it will massively change the world because we want it to. Not necessarily you or I, but the industry, for example, definitely wants to go there. We want to exploration and engineering-wise, we want to go there. We want to see if that's possible. The companies, they want to be the first ones in this new world, and so you can bet your ass that new world will be emerging, and there's no choice. And so you better adapt to it. Adapt to the fact that the AI will be climbing the hierarchy of abstractions. See, I showed you this pyramid early in the video, with the low hierarchy levels, and that's levels on which the machines, the artificial intelligences can work and could, for example, there was the completion of type completion, which didn't even involve a neural network, I guess. And then there was automatic sorting of emails, maybe. And then there was automatic response to emails based upon text snippets. And then at some point, now we have these very intelligent chatbot kind of things, which are really knowledgeable of the world. And so this means that the level on which an AI can currently replace you is very low. It currently you would have a document that you would have to read and then type into a computer. But that task is now certainly done by machines. And that's the understanding I'm trying to give you here. And that's also where I want to end the video. Oh, I thought it was fade out. Too bad. Oh, let's leave this on then. That the machines will climb higher into this hierarchy of informational hierarchy, and also in this hierarchy of physical reality, in their ability to alter it, to affect it, to understand it. This alien race is coming, this alien species. We are creating it, it will be coming. It will even develop itself at some point, which in part is already doing. So, well, you have to adapt to this, and this means that you should utilize AI currently, today. Go out, use one of these, use it today, go out, do it. And try to utilize them at your job, or try to imagine how they could be utilized at your job, or how, once they're more capable, they could replace you at your job. In other words, try to become the person who would be the lion tamer, instead of the one who gets, well, basically eaten by the lions, so to speak. That's what you need to do. You need to do that, else you will be cast aside by the incredibly energetic flow change of reality that is upon us. See you.